particular pleasure of mine to have the opportunity to read this because we have worked together so long on so many Highway 82 projects. I'm sure Patty has the same sort of history. But let's, with no further ado, please rise.
You get to
and
come up
you'll
here.
come forward and then kind of face the cameras in front of us. Afterwards, you'll have a chance to say a few words. So
okay, great.
That through. Okay. A proclamation of the Board of County Commissioners of Picken County honoring Joe Elson. Whereas Joe Elson started cutting his engineering teeth by working for CDOT at the age of 22 in 1983 as a project engineer on the 13-year, $500+ million I-70 Glenwood Canyon project. Joe ensured this modern engineering marvel, Glenwood Canyon project, was completed well ahead of schedule by resolving disputes and creating an environment of project participation and participant collaboration. Whereas, like a well-constructed bridge expansion joint, Joe has filled a gap between communities and infrastructure needs as a flexible leader and promoter of transportation improvements throughout the western slope of Colorado. Whereas Joe rose through the ranks as CDOT to resident engineer and then to program engineer for Region 3, our region, and ensured hundreds of millions of dollars of infrastructure improvements were prioritized cooperatively, transparently, and with future generations in mind. Whereas Joe faced substantial infrastructure challenges ranging from rockfall, sinkholes, difficult terrain, congested commuter corridors, failing bridges, reduced funding, and a stained orange vest. Joe gave up some of his personal life and holidays with family and friends to respond to transportation emergencies like avalanches of rocks and flooding. Whereas Joe was heard several times saying, "You can never have too many roundabouts."
The roundabout.
Whereas Joe oversaw the expansion of State Highway 82 from Basalt to Buttermilk that lasted 7 years and cost $185 million and resulted in a highway that balanced natural aesthetics, environmental protection, with innovative engineering of 42 retaining walls and 6 bridges. Whereas Joe orchestrated funding and ensured the quick replacement of the Maroon Creek Bridge with an award-winning structure that complements the historic bridge. And whereas, like a continuous rumble strip along the interstate, Joe has calmly guided CDOT teams with community participation through public processes that resulted in transportation improvements that met community needs and will serve for many generations to come. Joe cultivated open public involvement and nurtured strong team partnering and communications throughout sometimes controversial transportation improvement projects. And whereas Joe has collaboratively set the stage for the much anticipated replacement of the Grand Avenue Bridge in Glenwood Springs, which will allow the safe and efficient flow of residents, visitors, and goods into the Roaring Fork Valley. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed that the Board of County Commissioners recognizes Joe Elson for his many years of dedication and commitment to the citizens of Picken County, dated this 24th day of June 2015.
I'm honored, humbled. Would this be a good time to ask you for more money?
Never a good time to ask for more money.
Humor has always been kind of key to keeping things calm. But no, thank you. You've been great to work with. Picken County has really just been. It's always a special place, but it's really been a great place to build projects and to talk to people. And it's just gorgeous up here. It's a real need. You've always looked at the sustainable side and trying to get not really focus it on cars, but about moving people and keeping transit alive. I think that's huge. And, thinking about coming up here, it really took me back to running the Shale Bluffs project. Which I came back and, we had that little landslide on 9999. Everyone thought their computer was just going to bonk out, but instead we had a landslide in Shale Bluffs, and we put in those that shoring, and Jack Hatfield's like, I need to meet you out there with a tape measure. I need to make sure that that train's still going to fit through there. And so we did, and luckily
It fit.
it fit. So, but no, it's been a great ride, and man, going through all those projects, I thought, no wonder I'm so tired. My hair was turning gray. It wasn't gray not too long ago. Grand Avenue Bridge, maybe. It's just been great, and I really appreciate all your support. So, thanks.
Thank you, and certainly thank your colleagues at CDOT as well. We know it's always part of a team effort, but you really led that team so well.
It totally is a team effort. The people have been amazing. The CDOT people, our consultants, the local agencies, the stakeholders. Everyone's a key piece, so it's great.
All right.
Well,
Thank you.
before you sit down, I have my own personal proclamation.
Please.
This is my personal Joe Elson proclamation. Whereas I have known Joe since 1999 when he was 38 years old, and when I was older than he was, but much younger than I am now. Whereas I had the honor and privilege of having margaritas and nachos at the cantina with Joe and his wife and his mother. Whereas my most favorite memory of Joe is when my son Trevor got his driver's license, and Joe very wisely posted a notice on the Highway 82 electronic sign saying, "Caution, Trevor Clapper driving." My son was going to kill us both. Whereas Joe is more than a great engineer, more than a great community advocate. Joe Elson is a great guy and a great friend. Now, therefore be it proclaimed that Joe Elson is to have fun and enjoy his retirement.
Yay, very good. Well done.
I took that already. Thanks so much.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Joe.
And now I would ask, are there any additions or deletions to today's agenda?
There are none that I have.
No, oh, I think we're going to add an executive session.
Oh, the one item from yesterday, that's
Yes,
correct.
so we will be adding
Thank
executive session at the end of
Thank
the
you.
meeting. You're welcome. And now we will go to public comment. This is a chance for members of the public to address items that are not on the agenda. Please limit your comments to about 3 minutes, 3 to 5 minutes. MZVC, please come forward. Just identify yourself for the public record.
Thank you, Madam Commissioner. My nomenclature is MZVC III. Mr. Newman, this is directed through the chair to Mr. Newman. You did a fantastic job on stewardship. You know, with that community there, now it forces them to get into stewardship if they want to. But ministers need to listen to what you had said. I mean, I was awed. Fantastic job on stewardship.
I don't remember what I said.
Yeah, I'm serious.
Which community are you referring to, perhaps?
Oh, he knows, the one that the chairman said he never went on a man's land illegally. You know those
Okay.
people. They were whining and everything else.
It was the Lower River Road.
You know which community I'm talking about. You did stewardship, and you know. You don't use that expression, but it was stewardship. Great. All right, now, I'm just wondering, how do the people in Redstone and Basalt deal in terms of old folks when it comes for gyms? Now, they have other communities that are near them. Can we work out a deal for these old people? Now, people from Basalt, you can't expect them to drive all the way up to the Ark. Now, I did hear where there is a gym here in town that's considering, you know, the silver slipper thing, whatever you want to call it. But however, we need more. Can there be an influence in Basalt to help out the old people? When it comes to Redstone, whatever's over there, I haven't been over there. I've just seen some of the canyon. Can they be helped out too with neighboring communities, even if it's Garfield County, all right, or Eagle, all right? Now, the next thing, the dope smell. Remember, the TV cameras were off before. The dope smell. I can guarantee you that those workers and those residents that are getting all that dope smell, it's in their system. So if they were to be tested for dope, it's going to come out positive. I mean, that's a guarantee. In fact, I would suggest that they go and see about it if they're going to have to try to get a job or whatever else, and they might be able to make some money in the court system. You know, hint, hint. Anyway, what happens is this. If they had listened to Mr. Newman's stewardship the next day, well, they might have also contacted Governor Cuomo of New York. who graduated from Fordham University. All right, now I'm still debating about contacting my fellow alumnus, all right, dealing with the situation since that company has an LLC operation now in New York State. If you can't take care of the problem, well, you heard of New York's reputation in the state, right? Boy, they might just help out the problem with this particular company. Now, the next is the Pledge of Allegiance. I notice here the Pledge of Allegiance is not done. I would like to see it done. All right? There's another entity in this county. I can't, or there could be another two that don't do the Pledge of Allegiance. However, as elected officials in the United States of America, whether you agree or not, you are supposed to take the Pledge of Allegiance to the United States Constitution. And also, other government workers I know across America must also do it. All right? What I'm suggesting is that the Pledge of Allegiance be done at every formal meeting of this Board of Commissioners. All right? Now, what happens, you brag about how all these other government leaders come here, and presidents and all that, but isn't it an insult? Everybody else but you. Can we have a change for the better or the good? All right? And hopefully, it'll be very soon. Thank you very much, and thanks for the stewardship.
Thanks,
Okay.
MC.
Thank you. Are there other members of the public here who would like to speak on items during this public comment period? Okay, seeing none, I will close that section of public comments and go to commissioner comments.
I just
Okay.
want to remind people again about rivers growing really fast, and please be safe out there. We've had another tragedy, and I just want people to be careful. The river is beautiful right now. It's kind of enticing, but please proceed with caution.
George, no comments today? No, and I have no comments either, other than to say that I believe Michael is out on vacation this week, and Steve Child is representing our board in Washington, D.C. at the Fee and Dividend Climate Change Rally in Washington, D.C. So we would now move on to consent items. These are a single reading. I would like to pull item number 2 myself.
I did too.
Okay, and then I would solicit any motions for the approval of the minutes of the regular meeting of June 10th and the work session meeting of June 2nd and June 9th, as well as a, well, let's just do those one at a time. Is there a motion on the minutes?
So moved.
Seconded?
Okay, any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right.
Okay, we will now skip down to item number 3. This is a resolution appointing citizen board members, and I just wanted to take the time on this as we make the motion to thank all of our citizen board volunteers. They really are what make the county tick, and they do an awful lot of work for us in so many different areas. This will be an appointment of John Kelleher to the library board, and Dallas Blaney to the Elections Commission, Elizabeth Burke to the Senior Services, Candace Cross to the Citizen Grant Review Committee, and Ralph Dupes to the Board of Appeals. Is there a motion to appoint these folks?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, any further comments? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much. And now we will move back to the second item, which is a resolution supporting continued federal ownership of federal public lands. I see we have Ellen with us here, who has helped draft this from the Community Development Office. If you'd like to step forward to the desk. I have mentioned this to the board in work session formats, and staff has produced this very nice resolution. I think we may have one amendment to it. But I have, again, mentioned there is a national movement to return the public lands that the federal government owns to the individual states, for those states to use as they see fit to increase productivity, tax revenues to counties, better forest management, items like that are the flag under which it flies, states' rights type of issues. Yet at the same time, it would be the loss of the heritage of all Americans to use and enjoy those federal forested lands and BLM lands. I've thought a lot about this and had to deal with this movement at a national level. It's being heavily promoted by the state of Utah, Utah's governor. They don't like the preservation of areas that they would like to see, quote, on the tax rolls. And I think that's a little bit of a misnomer, because a lot of this land is very difficult terrain, very hard to access, and would be categorized as agricultural lands. And we all know that agricultural lands pay a very, very low tax rate, if any at all. The effort is led by a group called the American Lands Council, and it is something that has come before the NACO Public Lands Steering Committee. They tend to be supportive if the state itself and the county itself want those sort of things to happen. Yet I just don't think it's really been looked at very carefully by the majority of Americans without public lands. And we did see bills to move this effort forward at the State House this last year. It made it out of the Senate first hearing committee. It was later defeated. I went down to testify against it. And so I think with the board's permission, perhaps I should read the resolution, or would you like to make your comments first?
I was just wondering what amendment you were thinking of.
Well, as I looked through this, when we got to the now therefore be it resolved, I don't believe we were as clear that we're talking about all federal lands and not just that we don't want the lands, federal lands in Pickens County to be transferred to the state. And so Ellen has brought forward a potential amendment that would read, the Pickens County Board of County Commissioners strongly supports continued federal land ownership and management throughout the western United States as a means of protecting the public interest and enjoyment of untrammeled lands that comprise our western heritage. So would there be a motion to add that amendment to the resolution?
So moved.
Yeah, second.
Okay, thank you.
But I have a broader issue.
Please, go right ahead.
I don't know, Rachel, you're the one who's really most involved in this, but I didn't find any issue, any statement in here about which is my concern, is the financial impact to the states when the states take over this land, and will the states be able to afford the management of these lands? And my concern then leads to, we're talking about public access, public lands, and the fear for me is if the states take over ownership of these lands and don't have the financial resources to manage it, that they'll sell them off. So we won't have an issue of public lands or public access anymore. They will be gone. So it's not a matter of the states allowing public access, it's the states getting rid of some of these lands. And I didn't know, Rachel, if that was too controversial to throw into this, or if it's a point that we might want to add.
No, I think it's a point we might want to add. I don't think it's controversial. Utah did spend over $500,000 with 3 of their universities to do a study of the financial viability of this. But when you really delve into the numbers and details, it was based on gasoline still being above $80 a barrel and other energy products. So when you look at even this recent short decline, it would have left that state with tens of millions of dollars whole in the budget to continue to manage those lands. And we know in a state like Colorado with its Tabor rules, it's not as if the legislature could raise any taxes to pay for a shortfall. We also look at the tremendous cost, almost unimaginable cost of firefighting in the West.
Right.
And the replication of the types of federal agencies that manage our federal lands are considered, would be a huge increase in state employees if you replace the biologists and so on. It was not long ago at all where the Colorado Division of Parks had to merge with the Division of Wildlife because the park system was unsustainable and was not, they couldn't even maintain the state parks in Colorado at a viable level. And so they merged it with the Department of Wildlife because the hunting tags
More revenue.
create more revenue. And it's certainly efficiency in government, but a good example. The other item that's worth looking at is that historically, states in the West received large blocks of federal land for school trusts, for the building of schools. And the way those are managed, the vast majority of those lands have either been sold or leased, and it's private, and you cannot access and use those public lands anymore. But that was the purpose of those lands, but that is the history of how quickly those resources become used up.
So I would just like to see another statement as to the financial, you guys can word it however you want, the financial impacts to the states and the concern that the states may then be forced to sell off some of these public lands, so we will no longer have that asset,
Yeah.
public asset.
It's very interesting, of course, because most counties have not zoned in any way, shape, or form their public lands, their surrounding public lands. And in a place like Colorado, if you go to the underlying zoning of a minimum of 35 acres per one house, you know, you could just see an awful lot of development in unsustainable areas. Let me ask our attorney, is it possible to pass the resolution to be amended to include the fiscal impacts of the states without having exact language on that now?
Without having like a specific number sort of a thing, yes.
Yeah, okay.
Because that's something that can be readily ascertained and just inserted into the resolution.
Yeah, so we can follow.
Yeah, part of the timeliness of this is that I will be going to the annual convention of the National Association of Counties in North Carolina in July, and that group needs to reauthorize its resolutions every year, its positions, its lobbying statements. Frankly, I anticipate that the movement will pass within that group. When you talk to Idaho and Arizona and a few of these other states, there are differences of opinions. Yet Colorado legislators, again acting last session, really spurred a lot of people to pass their own. So we are really joining San Juan County, La Plata County, San Miguel County, I believe Summit County has or is passing one this week, ourselves, and Eagle County, others as well. So
That's good.
This gives me a little more background when we go to cast that vote in July in NACO, that of which interests we're representing at the table. So is there a motion to approve as amended or further comments on this?
I'm gonna make a motion to approve as amended.
I'll second.
Okay.
Thank you, Rachel, for bringing it forward. It's critically important to the country, I think.
Some folks feel like this is a new version of the Sagebrush Rebellion and have not taken it very seriously. The larger environmental groups and on, this quote isn't possible. I did hear a really good lecture by a CU Western Law Land professor that Club 20 helped host, and he said that he felt the legal arguments for demanding the transfer of the lands back to the states had zero chance, that there was not grounds under the fair and equal treatment of states, and that sort of provision applied to everyone in a new state would get the same vote, or everyone in the new state would get the same tax rate at a federal level, but not related to the lands. However, he said it is 100% within the purview of Congress to give lands away, and that has been traditional, whether it was the railroad expansion or the Homesteading Act or forward. So again, legally, the lawsuit probably doesn't have much merit to demand this, but that doesn't mean that a function of Congress couldn't. And there is now a caucus in the House that has been started by 2 Utah congressmen to facilitate this, and the latest federal budget from the Senate included $500,000 that Senator Lisa Murkowski from Alaska had inserted to begin studying and facilitating this transfer of public lands. So the movement is alive and well, and it's time to become more proactive. So thank you, Ellen, for your work.
Thanks,
and I'll
Ellen.
call the question. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. We will now move on to individual consideration items. There is an application for a special event liquor license permit submitted by the Friends of the Aspen Animal Shelter. Jeanette Jones is our clerk staffer for it, and we have, I believe, a representative of the animal shelter here with us today. Seth, how are you?
Doing well, thanks.
Good.
Hi, Seth.
And if you'll both just identify yourselves for the record, and we'll begin.
Jeanette Jones, Deputy County Clerk.
Seth Saxon, President of Friends of the Aspen Animal Shelter.
Thank you.
This is an application for a special event liquor license for the Friends of the Animal Shelter. I want to make sure I get
Friends of the Aspen.
Friends of the, because there's two
Aspen Animal
different
Shelter. Yeah, Friends of the
things
Aspen
going
Animal
on
Shelter.
here. Thank you. And I'll just turn the time over to Seth.
Okay, so
Give
I
me the
just
scoop.
tell you about what's going on?
Tell us
Yeah,
what's going
tell us
on,
what's
and
going
tell
on.
us when, where, and how do
Okay.
people get tickets.
So basically, for a quick one sentence history, that one sentence always turns into a couple, but we formed our nonprofit in '99 in order to build the new Aspen-Picken County Animal Shelter. And then once the shelter was built, we changed our name from the Aspen-Picken Capital Campaign to Friends of the Aspen Animal Shelter. And we're rocking out, and we neuter thousands of dogs a year, not only for free in the valley here, which includes all the city of Aspen and Picken County dogs and cats that come into the shelter, but all over the country on Indian reservations in the Four Corners region. And we take an additional 200 dogs and cats on top of the city and county animals in from death row all over the country. So the money's well spent. And to wrap it all up, and then give you specifics, is since '99, we've always had pretty hardcore fundraisers. And I always say that we went from this very grassroots group to also becoming a well-oiled machine and raising money. And we decided this summer, after doing a number of events that were successful and fun, but we decided this year, let's go back to our roots, and let's just go back and be grassrootsy, and let's give back to the community. And rather than asking anyone for a dime, let's have an event that is free. And so on Sunday, July 12th, from 11 a.m. to 4 p.m., we're calling it a Dog Day afternoon. And it's BYOD, bring your own dog. So all friendly leashed dogs are welcome, including children. Children must be neutered and vaccinated.
Bark collar.
Yeah, tags on it. It's just gonna be a fun event, and we're really not asking for anything. It's gonna be live music all day, from Dan Sheridan to Rob Leventhal and his band to DJ Dylan, amongst others. And we're going to have free food from Kenichi to Paradise Bakery to the ski company's mobile food van is going to be there, and many others. Once again, I'm leaving people out, but I'm trying to flow through all of this. We're trying to find a dunking tank right now, and I've already inquired with Steve Skadron if he'd sit in the tank, and maybe you guys will come be a part of it. It's just fun times. Scott Dolganow, who's on our nonprofit board, and a vet in the valley, is going to be there to answer questions for people about their pets. A dog trainer will be on hand answering questions. We're going to have our pet tag machine out there. So you get the idea. It goes on and on and on. We'll have an open house at the shelter. This is all going to be outside in the parking lot, tented in. Inside, people are welcome to wander around, play with puppies. We're going to even have a petting zoo on the other side of the facility, closer to the city snow dump, so it's away from all the dogs and the people, but just a little petting zoo, just for fun for the kids. And I'd really like to thank EKS Events. So Elizabeth Schlossberg and then JB and Shauna are here from EKS, and they are donating all of their time. And to go to kind of pull them in, we some summers were just fried from these big events. And many years ago, Elizabeth had said to me, "Hey, if you ever want help with an event, give me a call." I said, "Thanks, no thanks. We do it on our own." And I had forgotten my conversation, but I had repeated it to some of the board members. And actually, a founding board member, Bland Nesbitt, is
Hi,
here.
Bland.
And she's great.
Yes, yes.
So, to really wrap it up completely, I was reminded in a board meeting when we were coming up with ideas for our Dog Day Afternoon Carnival, and maybe it was Bland, somebody said, "Hey, you mentioned that Elizabeth said that EKS would help." I said, I don't know if I remember that or not. So I called Elizabeth and simply said, "Elizabeth, someone told me that you and I spoke and that you had offered your services, and please don't feel any obligation, or maybe do it and we'll pay you, but what do you think? And she said, oh my gosh, I've been waiting for you to call. I'd love to do this. So here we are today, teaming up with EKS Events. We're going to throw a community party free to the public. Thank you.
All right, very good. That's good spiel. George?
Yeah, that's exciting.
I just put you in my phone. That's what I was doing, putting you in my phone, so I've got you.
My question is, free party and dogs and out at the animal shelter, and how are you going to accommodate all the people that hopefully will
Well,
attend?
luckily, thanks to Jerry Nye, who runs the city snow dump, we've had a lot of events there over the years, from our open house to Bernadette Peters has been there, to Cesar Milan. So we've definitely had big events there. And Jerry Nye is really generous with the city snow dump. And parking is in there. We always abide by the law. And
shuttle.
And we have a shuttle. Thanks, Glenn. So we will have a shuttle from town.
And they'll take dogs too.
Yeah, and you bring your dogs on the shuttle.
Oh, nice.
And and we purposely spread it out throughout the day from 11 to 4, so that we're not just going to have 200 people all at one time. We're kind of throughout the day.
Okay.
Great.
And your alcohol servers are tips trained?
EKS can answer that.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Okay, yes, that's a yes for the record. Patty?
Yeah, Yuffie and I will be there.
Awesome.
Seth was so gracious and helped Tommy and I get our Goofy Yuffie, and she still loves going out there and seeing the guys. It's like going home for her. Yeah, she's
Cool,
great.
yeah. You guys bring your dogs. And I'd like to thank, we have so many sponsors, but what I thought you were going to ask is, how can Wise, a nonprofit, throw an event for free? We were going to, and actually I had offered to underwrite some of it with my actual Aspen Animal Shelter, the for-profit, self-sustaining business out there that I have a contract with you guys, and Blaine had offered to underwrite some of it. Thanks again to EKS Events, now including Alpine Bank, amongst others. I have too many messy notes here, but Alpine Bank, amongst others, are sponsoring and actually giving money to help underwrite the whole thing.
Great.
So
You can make money.
yeah, you might walk away with money. So
Yeah.
it's pretty cool. And now Blaine and I are off the hook.
Yeah,
Yeah.
very good, very good.
Thank goodness.
We'll remember you offered, and we'll find something else
Yeah,
we'd
yeah, yeah.
like to do. This is it's a great facility out there. I remember the old facility in the ABC. I remember your dreams of building the new shelter. I remember what we went through to get that land and cooperatively with the city of Aspen to get it built in. It's wonderful out there.
Cool.
You
Thank
did a great job.
Thanks.
You do a great job.
Thank you very much.
I'm in full agreement. It's something to be proud of that we have a no-kill shelter, and that you're able to do so much with spaying and neutering and adoption of dogs and cats too. There's a pretty good cat room out there, and I remember working with Georgianne Wagaman on the city
Yes.
council
Yeah.
side of this
She's
thing
still
as
on the
well,
board.
and she's still on the board. So thanks to all the board members for all your work and your contribution to the community. Is there a motion?
I'll do a motion to approve. I don't know what I did with it in front of me. The special event liquor license application for the Friends of Aspen Animal Shelter.
Second?
Okay. And no further discussion. All in favor, say aye.
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 Thanks.
Cool.
Thank you very much.
See you guys
and,
there.
I always get a high when I come in here. I don't know why. Thanks. I appreciate it.
Okay. We would now move on to individual consideration items, second reading and public hearing. Oh, thank you. I will be out of town.
I've got you in my phone. I just put you in my phone.
Wrong.
It's funny, my family reunion, my theme is carnival for our dinner.
Okay, and so this item is resolution authorizing the supplemental appropriation for carryover projects. Susan Atwood at the Finance Department will be presenting. We also have seen this on first reading, and it is the projects that have been approved by the board in the past and funds allocated to them, but they've not been expended because the projects themselves were not completed in that calendar year. It may include some projects that are rolling over from more than one calendar year, but that are still active endeavors of the county. Susan, if you'd like to identify yourself and then.
Susan Atwood with the Finance Department, and I think Rachel summed it up nicely. These are projects that need to be entered into the 2015 budget, as the budget from last year was not expended. Do you have any questions?
Are there any changes in either one of these resolutions from first reading?
No.
Okay. This is a public hearing. Is there any members of the public who would care to speak to this item? Okay, there being none, board members, is there a motion?
I'll do a motion to approve a resolution of the Board of County Commissioners providing supplemental appropriations to the 2015 budget for 2014 carryover projects.
Second?
Okay, no further discussion. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. And now Susan gets to stay right in place. And we'll go to the next item, which is also budget related. It is a resolution of the Board of County Commissioners providing for supplemental appropriations to the 2015 budget. So Susan, if you'll tell us how this one's different.
These were projects you approved between January and May, and you approved the supplemental. This is the formal resolution to put it into the 2015 budget. There is no change from the last time.
Thank you. And we do this generally on a quarterly basis if we have any projects that have been approved?
Yes.
Okay, and those projects we've all seen and discussed in work session formats. So, this is a public hearing. Is anyone here to comment on the supplemental appropriations to the 2015 budget? There being none, I will close the public hearing and accept a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve a resolution of the Board of County Commissioners providing supplemental appropriations to the 2015 budget, January through May.
Second?
Okay, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Thank you very much for your time, Susan.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Susan.
It's got to be nice to start preparing the next supplement.
Yeah.
Halfway done.
Halfway done, thank you. We will now hear from our Environmental Health Director, Kurt Dahl, and we have a resolution approving the Colorado Department of Public Health Environment Consumer Protection Contract.
Good afternoon, Kurt Dahl, Pickens County Environmental Health, and I have Rachel Burmeister with the City of Aspen Environmental Health and Sustainability Department. We're here today to, this is a second reading for the contract renewal, amendment number 3 to our consumer protection contract. The consumer protection contract, we agree with the State Health Department to do inspections of restaurants, child care facilities, schools, and investigate complaints on those 3 types of facilities, and then in addition, pools or mobile home parks or hotels, if we get any. We've had a contract with the State Health Department since about the 1960s, late 60s. So for a very long time, when we were a joint department with the city, and then now the city and county have had separate contracts with the State Health Department for consumer protection. We have no changes this year with the exception of one, and that was that the State Health Department asked the city and the county if we would be willing to combine our contract to streamline their process really for them. They have contracts just solely with one entity, typically in counties, and so it helps them with administration purposes. We were in agreement, and in anticipation of this, the IGA we signed earlier in the year with the city discussed a joint contract between the state, and it will be with Pickens County, and then Pickens County will give the fees associated with the contract to the city that are allotted to the city. The contract itself reads, it's an amendment, so one of the confusing things about it is that it actually reads as an increase, which was something I failed to mention last time. It says increase by $20,000. It's actually for the same amount, but because it's an amendment, first of all, they use the language increase. Second of all, $20,000 is not really an increase. Both our departments currently receive $10,000, so it is exactly the same. As we previously discussed, the city and county both subsidize the programs fairly heavily, to the, I believe about 60% each. So the fees for the licenses from the retail food program, and then the monies from the contract only cover about 40%. I believe that's the gist of it.
Thank you very much for the backgrounding on that. We did discuss this a little bit yesterday in the context that Colorado Counties, Inc. is soliciting potential legislative actions for the coming legislative session. We have to apply those by July 10th. We know that a great many other counties or towns as well are affected by this and would like to see more recovery of the program through increased fees to the restaurants, or increased from the state for that matter, but that's not too likely. And so we talked briefly about going ahead and putting that in again as a legislative request. It would be great if the city, through its channels with Colorado Municipal League, could bring that same sort of legislative issue forward.
That's
so
a good
that we
idea.
could, have that 1-2 punch. Board members, are there any questions for our
Nope.
staff here? Okay, this is a public hearing. Is anyone here from the public to speak to this matter? There being none, we will close the public comment on that, and I would accept a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve approving the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment Consumer Protection Contract Amendment Number 3.
Second?
Okay. I should actually state also that the fees that can be charged are set in statute, oddly enough. And so they have no inflationary adjuster, and I don't think they've been adjusted for a long time. It seems quite odd to have
A fee in
fees in state statute, but that's how it is. So all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Thanks.
Thank you very
you.
much. Appreciate your time and appreciate the cooperation with the city very much. Okay, we will now move into our land use public hearing section of the agenda. We only have 2 items on there. One is going to be a continuation of a takings determination, and the larger is the Nakagawa activity envelope. I think that's going to be a slightly larger or longer conversation, so we're going to make a motion on the takings determination and then take a very short break and then return for the meeting. George?
I have a question on this, because this takings has been continued for several months, and now it's to be continued to October 14th. And I thought the board had discussed when there's a sort of a time period where we decide not to continue it, but that the applicant would just have to start again. And so why are we extending this all the way out to October at this point? It's already been extended several times.
The reason it's being extended is that the application was denied by the hearing officer, and with that denial, if someone wants to apply for a takings, they have to do so within 15 working days of the date of that decision. They did that, the applicant did that, and then we, ComDev, put the item on for board review. They are not ready to have the board make a takings determination yet, and they keep on requesting us to continue it. For us to remove it off the agenda would necessitate them then reapplying, getting denied again, and getting another takings request. And I guess we could do it that way, but they've continually requested that we continue takings.
How long has it been continued
It's been
now?
a while. I don't know the exact date.
Well, it was on one of my first meetings, so it's been 6 months at least,
So
or maybe prior.
Could you explain that process again, if what they would have to do, and is there a fee associated with it? And
There is, yeah. If the board decided not to continue the takings today, the applicant would then be required to reapply for the activity envelope and site plan review, and we would again deny it, and they would then again request a takings hearing, and we would put it on a board agenda, and when they wanted to be in front of you, they would do it then. And that's about how, that's the process. There would be a fee. There would be the activity envelope and site plan fee, and associated costs with public noticing. Yeah, there would be.
I think the problem may lie in the fact that our code process doesn't say that once you have filed within your 15 days, you then must present to the board within 120 or something. It's so open-ended, so we don't really have a automatic expiration of that action.
That's true.
So, Pat?
You know, it was my understanding that they were trying to remedy this in some way too. Are they working on something else so it may not have to come back to us for takings?
It will have to come back to you for
Anyway,
takings.
but they have another remedy that would be part of the takings, and maybe that's what's delaying it, or?
One of the major issues is that they are working on getting legal access to the site. This is a property off Woods Road, and with getting legal access, they're trying to negotiate, this is what the attorney's telling me, trying to negotiate easement agreements across other property owners' lands. And that was an issue at the hearing officer meeting, and they're working on that. It's not finalized yet. That's one of the crux.
Yeah, I thought there
of
was
the
something
issues.
else going on.
There is, yeah. There's also a setback issue from jurisdictional wetlands then too. and they cannot comply with our code setbacks from the wetlands, and it's an automatic denial, and you can't do that.
Okay. Thank you. So, George, does that satisfy your questions on this?
Well, it does, but I'm not sure, you know, why and how long we would continue this process versus just having the applicant, when they're ready to come before us, come before us. I mean, they could, in theory, they could be continuing this for years.
John?
Any continuations at the discretion of the board. The item's been filed and the board can hear the matter. So the continuation is really an accommodation for the applicant. And I guess in the past, the discussion that the board had that I remember that addressed the situation that you're bringing up, George, is that we didn't want to create a de facto vested right without having an actual approval, because as an active application is reviewed until it's determined finally, it's reviewed under code at the time of the application is filed, and I don't know how long ago that was. But hearing Mike describe the application status, it doesn't seem to me it's necessarily a taking anyway. To satisfy a code requirement to develop property, you have to be able to get there. If the problem isn't so much the application of a code standards like slope or wildlife habitat or something like that, it's simply being able to get there legally. It's not a takings event from our standpoint. They just simply haven't provided us the demonstration that they can get to the property. Their application, in effect, wasn't right when it was filed.
Yeah. And I have to add in too, there were two parts of it. One was legal access, and then, like I said, Patty, there was a non-compliance with a setback from a wetland, and that was the second part of the denial.
Okay, Lance, did you have something to add?
Just the wetlands.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't have a problem continuing. I mean, it's not a burden on us, I don't think, to continue it, and until they are ready to come back before us, and hopefully they'll have their mitigation issue in hand, so we can do a takings and with some kind of resolution to the matter. And I mean, it doesn't take much energy for us to just put it on as a continuation, does it? I mean, it's rather than have to start all over, go back to the hearing officer, get denied, come back. I mean, takes up more of our staff time than, I think, just continuing.
Yeah, there's something to be said for that, and I think there's something to be said for
both
George's
sides.
concern as well, that, you know, do they linger for 2 years or 5 years, and how current, you know, because in some ways you're getting that right to stay under the old code if the code changes by not having reached resolution. On the other hand, I don't want to force this board into, you know, a decision-making process prematurely when it might involve a non-conforming TDR as a settlement of a takings, when they may find other ways to settle it without the creation of TDR. So, Lance?
Yeah, one thing we've done when this has come up before is we can say on whatever date you choose to continue it, and it wouldn't have to be to October, it could be next month, and we require the applicant to be here to explain to you why they think in their particular case that a continuance is justified.
Yeah, I think that we are getting to that point where at least a letter or a representative should be there if there's another continuation request after October 14th.
After October 14th.
I mean,
Yeah, I'll
that's
leave it
how
at
I
that.
would look at it, like that.
Okay.
George, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, at some point, you have
Yeah.
to sort of fish or cut bait here.
And sometimes these ones that I think George is referring to have had in the past been more of an actual application to build, not a takings hearing.
Right.
And those get continued for 2
Oh, yeah.
years, and it gets really hard for the neighbors and the public to be able to weigh in appropriately when it's really
You never know what's
finally
gonna be
come
on
to
there.
closure. So I would let anyone in the public know that if they would like to comment on the Garner's taking determination, they could do so now. Seeing no public comment on this item, I would request a motion to continue to October 14th.
I'll make a motion to continue to October 14th, 2015.
Is there a second?
Second, and with that,
We'd like the
notice,
applicant to be here.
the applicant should be here if they're going to request a further continuance.
Okay, or their representative?
Yes, I agree.
Okay, thank you very much for that. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. So that is approved. The next item is going to be the Nakagawa activity envelope and site plan review, special review for landscaping, building material storage, and commercial growth management exemption for insubstantial growth impacts. This was continued from 4/8/15, and we will take a 10-minute break while everyone sets up and then go into that item.
Great.
Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. It is Wednesday, June 24th, the regular meeting of the Board of County Commissioners. We're on our land use public hearings, and the current item is the Nakagawa activity envelope and site plan review, special review for landscaping / building material storage, and commercial growth management exemption for insubstantial growth impacts. This was continued from May 8th. And Mike Kramer will be presenting on behalf of the county. If you'd like to take it away, Mike.
Okay, thank you, Rachel. And actually, it was April 8th was the
I'm sorry.
last
Right.
last public hearing on this one. Mike Kramer with Pickens County Planning Staff, and the applicants are the Nakagawas. And next to me, we have Doug Pratt, who are representing the Nakagawas, and also Jimmy Nakagawa. And the subject parcel is located just east of the town of Basalt boundary and along Highway 82 in Pickens County in the Holland Hills area. And as I said, we had a meeting on April 8th, a public hearing in which the applicant was here and presented the topic for this 1,000 square foot commercial storage on what I've been calling the west property. And I put the map, well, I should say site plan up here. And the applicants actually have done a good job here showing this is an aerial of the east and the west parcel. I've been just calling this one the east parcel, where we all know we had a previous BOCC approval in 2011 for commercial storage for the Nakagawa business. And you can see here, this is where the main residence is. Here's the driveway that accesses to that residence, and Highway 82 right here. Here's the detached garage, and commercial storage is approved in these areas right here. The west parcel is the vacant parcel, and this is the topic of discussion, although you're seeing a site plan that merges both. On April 21st, the Board of County Commissioners had a site visit at the subject property, and then we also did a site visit on the east parcel too. And at the site visit and also at the last hearing, there were a number of issues that the board wanted the applicant to address and for staff to work on. And we've tried to outline those in bullet points in our short two-page memo here. And one of the biggest items that the board directed the applicant to work on was that they were thinking that it would be better to have a master plan for both properties, the east property and the west property, and to remove some of the impact that the east neighbors are experiencing. If you remember, the east neighbors are the Booths, the west neighbor is Mark Abadia. They've been active in participating in our discussions with this, and Mark is here today. I also did forward on the Booth's email to the board. They could not be here today, and so you do have their public comments. But the idea is that the applicant would remove storage from the approved area on the east parcel, and this is this area here, and combine the two parcels in effect to try and centralize the impact from the new commercial building and the storage and put it more to the middle of the properties, and that's what we're looking at here today. If you remember from our site visit, we accessed off here and then we all parked in this area, and then we walked and kind of stood back here to be able to look down on the properties. What Doug has done is he's shown a storage area for materials, which they've identified as flagstone and cinder blocks and other things that are associated with the materials for the Nakagawa business. Here's where the storage building would be located, and here's some parking and vehicular movement, some commercial vehicle storage, and then I can't see what's up in the corner up there, but more of the same. So this is their master plan for both properties. And if you remember from our discussions, there was talk about bulk storage and what type of materials would be stored there. We have the applicants who can address specifically what those things are and what it means to the business. Part of, if you remember the other resolution, the 2011 resolution, staff and actually the board requested that an equipment list and inventory of what the Nakagawa business entailed was attached to that resolution, and we actually thought that would be a good idea to also attach to this resolution if the board chose to adopt something like this. So Jimmy and Doug have assembled that inventory, and if you saw the draft resolution, that was identified as a attachment C. So when they're ready, they can hand out this inventory, and we can talk about what type of equipment would be stored there. Other highlights were that, if you remember, there's like an old kind of banked driveway on the western property line over here. I think one of the commissioners talked about revegetating that and making that go away and this being the main access. They've added landscaping on this western property boundary right here. And Doug just updated me a couple minutes ago before we started the meeting that there is talk of putting also a 6-foot wooden privacy fence that would mimic the other wooden privacy fences over here on the western boundary to help screen from the Obadias on that side. They can talk more about that too. You may remember from our last hearing, the neighbor showed us pictures of a berm that was failing and eroding onto the property. And we saw on the site visit that had been reseeded and had some matting put over it. And hopefully that's taking and the problem is cleaned up. Rachel, we had some discussions about the water, for lack of a better word, impoundment that we saw. And if you remember when we were standing up here during the site visit, that little area, that pond right here, was basically catching water out the Kesker ditch. And you asked that we contact Bill Blakesley. We did that. He did not think it was in violation of anything, and he classified that as an irrigation control structure and legal in its current configuration. So that was his statement for us, was that irrigation control structure. And then lastly, to try and address this master plan for both properties, you directed the staff and the applicant to come up with an idea for a comprehensive review of both properties. And the way that we thought we could do this is, obviously we're here today talking about it, but in the future, if something like this would be adopted by the board, we would do one comprehensive annual review for both the east parcel and the west parcel. And in doing so, we would rescind the 2011 approval that granted the east property the storage approval up here. With that would revert back to residential and not be approved for any further commercial storage of the Nakagawa business. And then, as I mentioned, centralize all the activities to this. That approval will then give the board the ability to have an annual review for the west parcel and the east parcel, and we have a site plan that mimics what we're talking here today, and hopefully that accomplishes what we're looking to do. Of note on that topic, Doug also mentioned before we started the meeting that there's going to be some lag time from this, if this would get adopted, to construction of the Nakagawa storage building, the garage, up here on the site plan. And Doug thinks that they probably won't start construction this summer yet, and that the east parcel would need to retain this approval up until this building got a CO, a certificate of occupancy, and they could start moving in and accomplishing this master plan. And that was a really good thing that I hadn't even thought of, and he'd like to have a discussion with the board on how that condition could be crafted for the resolution. And it may be as simple as just saying that at CO, the former resolutions are rescinded, and the applicable one that we're talking about today is the one that's in effect, and it could be as simple as that. And with that, that is all I had. The draft resolution is there for your review, and the one thing of note on condition number 4 of the draft resolution, we talked about the rescinding of that 2011 approval. And Doug made a good point. We should maybe call out all past annual review resolutions. And I think I'd like to identify those, and I might have those resolution numbers and could include that too in that condition. But that's the only change that we could think of, and staff is recommending approval subject to the draft resolution.
Okay, board members, questions for me?
I've got several, so.
Okay, go ahead.
The current storage area, how, if we have to wait for Doug's presentation, that's fine, you can make a note. But how large is the current storage area that they're currently operating under?
How large is it, as
Yes.
in like square footage?
Yes.
I don't know an answer to that.
Okay.
I don't know.
And maybe Doug will be able to answer that at some point. How many vehicles are under the current permit?
The current permit, just need to ask Doug. Doug, does the revised equipment list from the annual review hearing mimic to what you have today with this, or is this different?
It's a little bit different.
It's a little bit different.
Maybe I'll make it simpler. The proposal coming before us now, will it have additional vehicle storage, or will it be the same?
It looks like there would be additional storage if I'm comparing some of these here.
So then at some point, I'll want to know
We can clarify a little bit.
how many, what that is. One of the issues when we went on that site visit was to look at, there was some personal storage that was left over from jobs. So
Yellow on here.
So will that still be maintained for personal storage of unused materials? Or will they get moved into part of this new master plan?
That'd be a good question for the
Yeah,
applicants.
okay, that's fine. For the parking area, how many vehicles are looking at where you have vehicle circulation? When I look at this map, I'm seeing lots of different areas for storage, and so I'm a little concerned in terms about what that is really means for this master plan. So you've got utility trailers on the east side with equipment like snow plows and other things, and you've got material storage, and you've got vehicle circulation. So how many vehicles do you anticipate? And then when you go to the west side, you have more space for additional commercial vehicles and utility trailers, and then also additional bobcats. So it seems like we're scattering vehicles both on the east end and the west end. And so my question will be, what is that going to mean in terms of circulation, traffic, egress, in and out of the property onto 82? This is starting to look like much more of a active commercial business versus the original intent, which was just a commercial storage area. This is the way I'm seeing this right now.
I appreciate that comment, and I think it should be addressed. It is important to go back to this original application for the single site, which I believe included the storage of materials as well. That was part of what they were asking for as to why, but it is an increase between the one site to the two of how much is being done. So I think it points out.
Was it storage materials? I thought it was just, it was storage of equipment because it was a seasonal business. So in the wintertime, you would be storing your summer equipment, and in the summer, you'd be storing your snow plows. I didn't know.
I'd like that to be clarified
by
staff and the applicant. And I don't have a copy of that original submittal to use the western site. Patty, did you have any questions for Mike?
Just on the vehicle circulation on the map, what, does it go behind the, you know how the red line goes kind of behind the new storage facility, the garage? Is that going to be so you can drive all the way around it, or is it just?
I think that's what they're planning on doing, yeah, is
So
driving around that. Yeah.
technically is circular. I mean, so you could come in and go behind the building and come back out the other side? Because I didn't think we were going to have anything behind the building before. You good?
Yeah, we talked about it at the site visit.
Okay.
Any other questions?
No, I'm good.
And I would just comment then, to clarify what's approved on the east parcel, there is only storage of trailers, equipment, snow plows on the east parcel, and there was not approved for bulk storage. But as we learned from the site visit, it sounds like there's personal materials being stored over there, which we don't have a rule against personal storage.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I had one additional question. But
Please, go ahead, George.
again, you know, when I look at this master plan, it really looks to me like a much more ongoing active commercial operation. And so, Mike, on your note here for the exemption for commercial growth management for insubstantial growth impacts, how do you define what's substantial and what's an insubstantial growth impact?
There's a provision in the land use code that allows an applicant to apply for what's called a commercial growth management exemption for what we said in substantial growth impacts. And that was in the staff report from April 8th. And the way the code defines it is you can't exceed certain thresholds for type of commercial development. What the code requires is you can't exceed 1,000 square feet for a commercial building, in this case the Nakagawa Garage. You cannot exceed generating more than 3 employees for the business. The applicant has to address parking and not create off-site parking for commercial business. And the facilities, the actual operation of the business, has to not increase demand or basic government services that we provide. So, fire, water, sewer, code goes on to say schools and library, hospital. And I think the applicant has addressed that with this. So that's the way the code defines it.
So you said that no more than 3 employees makes it insubstantial?
That's correct.
And there are no more than 3 employees that are going to be operating on this?
That's what the applicant is represented, and the way the land use code then figures out how many employees are generated is based off square footage. So Chapter 8 of our land use code has a chart that talks about how many employees are generated with the size of a building. And in this case, a 1,000 square foot building generates 1.13 employees with development of this type. So the applicant then is required to mitigate for 1.13 employees.
So, but how do you take into account the number of employees that are going to be needed to utilize all these vehicles be coming in and out? It's got to be more than 3 employees that are going to be driving, whether it's snow plows or bobcats or unloading or loading materials. Are you telling me there's only going to be 3 employees there?
We can ask the applicant that. They're representing to us less than 3, but we also have to remember too that the Nakagawa business, if I remember correctly, operates out of Basalt too, Jimmy. So they do have other locations that they have a business within our valley.
But you're using number of employees for a specific land area. Okay.
And again, when we get to the presentation, perhaps clarify, that is a +3 for the new use on the eastern parcel, although there was a certain number of employees that were considered to be generated by the western parcel when that was first approved in 2011. So I don't think it becomes 3 for both. You're talking about what was existing approved, then plus for the new 1,000 square foot.
Well, we're mixing them a little bit. There
Okay,
was no
please.
there was no development of a commercial building on this property right here. This was a single-family residence and a detached garage. So the employee generation number doesn't kick in, and this is the eastern parcel. The western parcel most certainly does. With the development of this 1,000 square foot building, the code says it generates 1.13.
Okay. So again, if it's a master plan including both parcels, does 3 become the magic number to be it insubstantial, or is there any, I hate to say the word credit or allowance given for the western parcel that is part of this as well?
Mm-hmm. The development is not happening at the actual garage. The construction of the commercial building is not happening on the eastern parcel.
Okay.
And there still is that property line. You're right about that. I guess the way we're looking at this, even though this is a master plan, they're representing to us that they are not exceeding 3. So that's what I can say.
And the other thing about growth management, which is not always a good thing, but it's based on floor area. It's based on development primarily. And on the eastern parcel, there was no development, so there was determined, and we did that special review approval, there was no employee generation as a result of that. The Nakagawa employees are already there, already doing what they've always done, and that was just a house, and it's just used as a house. But now we are building a new building, a structure with floor area, and that's where growth management kicks in. And as Mike said, officially a 1,000 square foot warehouse type structure in our code is said to generate 1.13 employees.
So if they were not to build a structure, just for an example, and we just wanted to use that parcel just for storage for all these other entities, how would you classify it? Would it still be insubstantial, even though you may have more people entering and exiting?
We wouldn't even be in a growth management exemption discussion at all. They would be requesting just a special review for the western parcel to store commercial equipment.
Okay.
I have a few questions and comments as well, or perhaps more comments. You know, when I looked at this, I had to think to myself that it really just seemed very inadequate as a master planning document and schematic. And there's a certain uniqueness to this. We have two separate properties owned by the same individual, the same company, and a request to kind of see enlargement of activities there that, in order to plan it better, works on both parcels. But for me, to approve it as a master plan, I need to see more consideration of what is going to happen on the residential side and residential parcel. They're connected by default, you know, as employees of your company and by the site planning. And it's a relatively small house, and I think we should have, you know, say numbers of how many people can reside at the house. And I understand you're managing it well and everything, but who knows, you may sell the business to someone else in 2 years and they're taking over and they don't manage it well in terms of how many people can live in a house of that size, how many cars can be there. I'd hate to go forward with this and then end up with as many cars as ever and everyone say, well, they belong to the 6 people living in the house or the 8 people living in the house. It just doesn't seem integrated to the master plan to me. And that also then really relates to this concept of how much is going to be stored here privately. And again, I realize if this was just a residential development or something, we wouldn't have that ability to say, how does this area be cleaned up or what can occur there. I'm not sure how much it bothers the booths. If you look at a larger picture, they often have a lot of things stored on the driveway on that side as well. But from our site visit, it seemed, you know, really messy and just a growing scrap pile. So that, to me, needs to be addressed. The other thing that bothered me about this is it's a good view down, but it's not a view plane type of view of how these are going to be seen. And so I didn't find any detail about what would the construction of the garage look like. Would it, you know, is this going to be a metal shed garage? Is it going to be wood? Does it look like a horse barn? Is it, you know, how do these various components integrate for a copacetic look? I'd hate to see, you know, 10 different components that, you know, didn't really mesh with each other. And so I think that can make a huge difference of, you know, how it's perceived from the road and how it's perceived by the neighbors. You know, I was even looking at, say, the 4 commercial vehicles. On the left-hand side of our map, is a 6-foot privacy fence enough, or should it be more of a lean-to type structure that, again, does have the appearance of a horse barn or a loafing shed or something like that, and offer more screening? And I just didn't see the components that really tell me what it's going to look like afterwards. And we see that when we see an activities envelope and a site plan review and things like that on a residential project, and get to check the view planes and all. I'm not saying any of this would violate any of our view planes. I'm not asking for that. But at the same time, this is a special review use within a residential area. And it seems that understanding, is the tool shed going to be bright blue metal? Is it going to be green? Is it going to have a fake window or two, or a flower box or something on it to make it look like it's part of a house there? I mean, how does this blend in? It just, this doesn't give me that comfort level. And I don't want to approve something on faith and then come back and find out, oh, they decided to paint it purple, you know. It's just yeah, I'm just using exaggeration, clearly. So we also discussed on the site visit that again, to the westward side, if there was going to be fencing or additional fencing, that it be done in some consultation with the neighbor on that side as to the materials, the look, and the height. And when we get further into the conversation, I'd like to see if that occurred. And so those are the things that really struck me again about looking at the site plan. It would also perhaps describe more completely the storage of materials, and I'm not sure if that is new from the first reading of this application, where it was the 1,000 square foot garage, and now we're also seeing the materials. And so I just don't know, do you have to go in and get the flagstone every day? Does it sit there once a month? You know, does it make a lot of noise, unloading it, loading it? And does this create an ability to stockpile things that no one's really going to use for 3 years? I mean, I hate to say it that way, but that's what we saw at the side of the house, was things that people just didn't want to throw away because maybe they could fit into something or a personal project. And if this stockpile area becomes just a, you know, receiving area for things that might be used in 5 years, that would be inappropriate. That would not be the intention, because it does say, you know, bricks, irrigation pipe, you know, could be on and on in terms of whether these things are really used. I also wanted to make sure, as we are talking about potentially merging the older resolution of special use approval and the annual reviews, that all past conditions of that original approval are carried forward. And so I didn't really see that occurring in this resolution. I know we had hours of operation, you know, limits and things like that, which it just seems incomplete to not have that there. So, you know, for me at least, at this point in time, I'd rather continue this. I see this as just not being complete, and I want to make sure that the neighbors know exactly what was going to happen or what we would approve, and that I don't want the board in a position of 18 months from now coming back to say, this didn't look like I thought it was going to look like, and we didn't really know what we were looking at, because it is just an aerial view. So I do appreciate the aspects of that, but I think it needs to have more of a view plane and a description of materials and how it will work, you know, how it will be used. It needs to be part of the narrative that we approve with the conditions. That being said, that gives you a chance to address a few of those things, or others, George, if you wanted to add on.
One other thing, I'd like to also know your other location in Basalt, what that is being used for, and I guess my underlying interest is why a lot of these materials, and as Rachel alludes to, but I think will end up being a sort of a boneyard, why that couldn't be moved to your other location.
Okay. There we go, Doug. That puts
Okay.
you on the spot and on stage.
Well, I'll start with some of the documentation that we had prepared in the application. We did do renderings of elevations of the building. We also did some simulations, both side and front renderings showing, you know, I know they're still very general, but they show some reference to color and where windows are and what it might look like, shed roof. Then we did do some attempt at some simulations along Highway E2 of how much of that building could be seen with kind of the
Is
vegetation.
that in the original application?
That is.
Okay, because unfortunately that didn't carry forward with us to know which of those items.
So that is some of the response to what you're talking about, is that these pieces carried forward. It may not be exactly as it is. Generally, the building is located in the same location. You know, kind of the way the site is configured is generally the same. The building is the same 1,000 square foot building as we had originally proposed. So those things are in this document for your reference, and we can certainly go through those if you want to right now. But start with that, I guess, and then can I just keep kind of go on towards response?
Yeah, you know, maybe we could either pass those around or actually get the Elmo going and be able to project those.
Okay.
I can work on that while you're...
Okay, that'd be great. terms of the number of vehicles, I do have this exhibit C, or attachment C, which I'm going to actually keep one of these. So there were 4 vehicles approved in the original application in 2011, and under vehicles on this we have 4 vehicles as well, with some additional beds, I guess dump beds or beds that are hauled behind the vehicles. And Jimmy can describe these in a little bit more detail. In terms of the site plan itself, we were trying to centralize based on discussion points that we had with the neighbors and here at the BOCC meeting and at our site visit. We were trying to centralize the storage areas that were on the east side of the property. So we moved all of those locations to a central.
I'm sorry, you have to repeat, that was so
okay.
loud.
We were trying to centralize based on our previous conversations with the board at our site visit, with neighbors, and at the previous hearing, to centralize the locations for the storage into the center of the property to provide some distance from the neighboring properties for the storage areas. We did work with Mark on a fence on the west side of the property. Honestly, I was out of the country for 2 weeks. We talked today. We talked about a 6-foot wooden fence that would replicate the wooden fence. We spoke more specifically about the one that runs along the Rio Grande Trail, if you remember that one.
Run up his back.
It was a nicer wood fence that runs along the back of the trail, and we talked about doing that on the west side of the property. Mark may have some comments about that, but we did discuss that with him. In terms of the storage of the materials that are on the east side of the parcel now, and that we've discussed as potentially being, private storage materials, those materials we recognize were kind of left over from previous Nakagawa landscaping jobs, so there was maybe some overlap as storage materials that were maybe both associated with the business as well as personally with Hector Nakagawa. So we talked about removing those materials from that location, trying to utilize a central portion of the site for the storage of some of those materials, that they could continue to utilize those materials as needed.
So what commitment would be made along the Booth's property line where the storage exists now?
The commitment would be to be able to leave the vegetation and screening that's along that that's along that property line, along the eastern property line, and remove the landscape materials that are over there, so it just becomes residential up in that corner of the parcel. I know you've kind of tied a desire for residential master plan into this special use permit for the landscape storage master plan, or landscape storage facility. We had not tied those two things together. If we were going to revert that back to residential as a, in this current proposal, we were just saying that would revert back to residential. So we did not put constraints on that beyond what your code already says can be residential. So if that's something that's desired, then we need to address.
Doesn't the family members reside there?
There are 2 of Hector's.
There's family members of Hector that rent it.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just looking at, I'm sorry, we're going back and forth between the two, but you have the existing garage.
Right.
And then you have outdoor storage. And I just think that it would be valuable to say there will not be along the fence line outdoor storage of multiple items, that there now is a garage to either put some of the vehicles in or storage of those items. Because it's my understanding you're talking about taking the snow blowers and things that were stored in there and moving them over here. So I just feel that I don't want to have a kind of a mission creep where that slowly becomes old bicycles and who knows what else over here, on the side. But that's...
We can ask that, but it's residential property, and we don't really have any regulations for people storing residential personal belongings on the side of their house.
Well, we're looking at the property as a
So
whole.
we can bring that in at this point? Okay.
Yeah, and we do have
I want to make sure we
storage.
weren't overstepping our bounds on that, because, we have the neighbor next door who's got multiple RVs parked right there along that fence line, and lots of, people have lots of stuff on their property, and especially when you have larger properties. And I think it happens on both sides of this, but I don't have a problem cleaning it up and organizing it, because I think it makes for a better business operation at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, maybe to clarify my thinking a little bit for the board and others, I have to look at the, was it the old Swirsky house that was below Aspen Village store? And that was recently approved to move the landscaping and flower business to. And they had to integrate existing house and employee housing, and it's become an integrated area, and this just didn't have that same feeling of
That was
integrated.
more
And
organized.
it kind of helped clean up the entire site, and not just say, okay, we're going to work here and the other part of the site.
The old veterinary.
Yeah.
Because it looks great.
Yeah,
You're
exactly. So that was kind of my standard that I was looking at as an integration of these two parcels working together.
And I think that we can go ahead and address some of those concerns along that property line. Obviously, part of our reason for this plan was to remove some of those concerns from that property line. So obviously, we don't want to replicate them in a residential sense.
Right.
We'll go ahead and move them
And make some commitments there.
make some commitments to remove those and keep that open over on that side. But we would like to keep the fence and the vegetation that's there.
Yeah.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Okay. In response to the commercial, this looking like a commercial business, there's no intent to have any kind of retail here. Really, the site plan that we have put together accommodates circulation of vehicles with trailers behind them to be able to move around in the middle of that site and to be able to back trailers in where they need to be stored. So we do need some circulation in front of this building in order to do that. So because there's that circulation space does not mean that that's going to be storage space for the landscape storage. It means that there needs to be some space for vehicles to circulate around, trucks to circulate around with trailers behind it, and be able to perform some turning movements. So that was the intent of that circulation space in front of the storage facility itself. The storage behind the buildings, Steve Child had mentioned that maybe we could utilize that back area because it's somewhat unseen. There's a fence at the top of the hill by the Rio Grande Trail. There's a building, and if we stored some things behind it and potentially circulated but hid behind it, it would not be visible. So we did kind of put that into our plan that if we had the ability to circulate behind that building and utilize some of that for storage. Right now, I think we've shown, and I'm going to put that map back up there, we've talked about it being truck bed, racks.
Can you point on the map where you mean, or with the point?
Yeah, thanks. Top right? Top red, sorry. So that area back there. Right now, the Nakagawas have some truck racks that they pull in and they store just on the ground. So they'd be able to pull in this area here, take the racks off and put them, store them on the ground in that area behind the.
Okay, so you're talking about the entire area here could potentially be storage.
Right.
And that is not really for circulation of trucks coming around, per se, once you have storage in there.
And sometimes they do circulate around, but they push the racks off to the edge. So there could be a vehicle that has
still go around
a
the
rack
building.
on it. It can still go around. They could take the rack off, push it off to the edge, and still be able to get around. This is the circulation area with returning movements. If somebody were coming in, they'd be able to turn. They'd be able to turn into the parking spaces there, or turn a vehicle around and back into the storage area over here. So that was the purpose of that circulation area. I don't know if you remember, our previous plan had the circulation coming out here over closer to the edge of the western parcel, and we talked about pulling it in through here. I pulled it over as I did because there's some existing vegetation here that I wanted to preserve as screening, so that we didn't have to eliminate some of that larger vegetation. So just kind of went around that vegetation to enter and feel like there's still some screening material between the storage area here and Highway 82. As I said, there are, and we can put those up in a bit, we did do a kind of a simulation of screening from Highway 82 back to the storage facility itself. In terms of the insubstantial growth impacts, it was the criteria that Mike talked about. I mean, that was a criteria we used to put that kind of together, and kind of got all of that out of the code. And I think we talked a little bit about what will happen on the residential side. I would hope that If we do not store any residential materials over here, we might still, I don't know if you remember, there was still a kind of a bamboo fence and a gate right there that we, residents may be able to store some things between the garage and the residence over on that side, as long as they're residential materials. And again, this would be residential parking, and as we all know, people store things in their garage, even as residents. So this would be residential parking and storage, and then residential parking over here. So this would really function as a residential space versus what it is right now. Kind of reading through my notes here. We did consult with neighbors. I don't think Nancy Booth is in support of this project, so we did, even though she's not in support, we did not disregard her concerns. I mean, we tried to take all of those concerns and address those. I did send both Nancy Booth and Mark Obadia this plan. I think I was gone for a couple of weeks, so I sent it maybe 3 weeks ago, so they had some time to look at it. So hopefully that gave them some time to kind of contemplate the plan and the uses. We will go ahead and commit to continue to put a screen fence up on this side, even if we duplicate a fence down here. This fence is really going to be too low to like if there's a headlight that comes in or something like that. I feel like we do still need a screen up on this location here, so we'll commit to doing a screen fence up high and having another one down low.
Okay, so to be clear, you're talking about a wood fence along this property line that would replace the chicken wire fence now.
The chain link fence,
chain link fence, and then also a screening fence
right.
For the light of the vehicle.
And this would really be screening the activity. I think it would be better to have both than to replace one with the other.
What kind of re-veg are you doing on that old driveway, that strip that's between the fence and the berm?
We'll have to topsoil it. I mean, they'll have to be soiled
right.
just because it's kind of sub-base and gravel right now. So I think we'll go ahead and seed it, and it'll have to be irrigated. So the re-veg would be topsoil, irrigation, and seeding.
So we don't have to worry about any dust issues over that. So I think that's a great idea.
And we have a lot of vegetation along this edge already. We
Right.
may add some additional screening material in there, and we've made commitments to that in this plan. But I don't know that really adding additional materials in this area is going to help the screening issues. I think the fence here will help, mitigate activity in this location, and the fence here will mitigate the berm that's along the edge.
Well, I think eliminating that access is going to help with noise. We were concerned about gravel and dust and noise, crunching tires and trucks, and so that'll help bring it into the core.
You mentioned that all conditions from previous approvals need to be brought forward. I think that makes sense. Just one previous approval that we do have that needs to stay intact was just the variance that we got for the berm. So we don't want to have to do anything with that berm. It's there, it's growing, so, and that is not something that Mike proposed. I guess I'm just making it as a clarification that there's a Board of Adjustments resolution that would stay intact and association with this project.
And then other things such as hours of operation and commitments you've made before.
Right.
So that's a great, good call.
Okay. And in terms of how this facility might operate in conjunction with your one in Basalt, I guess one thing I'll mention just in terms of the storage of materials. I don't know if you remember on our site visit, there was some mulch that was being stored on the back of one of the trailers. I mean, if for some reason that mulch needs to come off so the trailer can be used for something else, to go pick something else up. I just think there's a little bit of interaction like that. This is not meant to be a staging area for landscape projects that happen on a regular basis. It's meant to be the vehicles are here. The vehicles may have some things stored on them, like mulch, like soil, like gravel, like flowers. That ultimately, if those are being stored on a trailer and need to somehow get distributed differently than they're being stored when they're picked up from nursery or wherever they're picked up from, then they would be able to do that at this location and transfer materials and take them out. So that's my understanding of kind of what we're talking about.
I would see making sure that is also then in the conditions, Mike, that I'm not sure exact wordsmithing, but to say that this is not a primary staging area for the landscape operations. any of the storage of materials. It's not, we don't anticipate seeing large trucks come in and make the deliveries directly to this site for storage piles of flagstone or anything else. So
We talked about that before, no
I just think
semis,
that
yeah.
we need to be very clear in this approval. George?
Well, just on that note, because you make a note here saying that under short-term staged materials, these materials will be staged short-term for projects, mulch, soil, gravel, flowers. So, you know, short-term for projects, I guess one could take liberty in terms of what that means. I would view that for a landscaping business, it's going to be utilized almost on a daily basis. Material that's needed for a project will come in or go out as these projects move along. So I just want to clarify that. That's how I'm viewing this.
Well, Jimmy, do you want to give
Yeah.
some interpretation of how you're?
And just identify yourself for the record, please.
Oh, Jimmy Nakagawa. So to answer your question there, I mean, I did put a list of mulch, soil, gravel, flowers. As Doug mentioned, we did have a truck there with mulch in the back. Sometimes it gets late, we don't finish a project. We park the truck there, it has that material. I want to specify the material. It's not like we're going to stage it there, and sometimes we get trees. We get 5, 6 trees, we get to plant 3 that day. I want to be able to drive my truck in there, back it up, disconnect the trailer, have the trees there. Trees can't stay on the truck for more than a day. They heat up, you know, they're going to die. Flowers, we can't have them on the trucks all day. It's bulk materials, soil, mulch, they can stay in the truck as long, you know, they start stinking up a little bit. We're not going to have them there a long time. Usually we go to the clients, we dump everything there, we do the project, get out. Unfortunately, sometimes we don't have enough time, we have to carry it back home. And then as bulk material, we don't store any bulk material like topsoil, mulch, all that stuff. We buy it at the local landfill. We take it directly as much as we need to. Unfortunately, sometimes we do have some left over, but it's not much.
So what you're saying is anything that's not used on a job or during that time period stays on the vehicle, but it's not going to be dumped, left on the ground for some later use.
I believe there will be situations where I would need to dump out a load and then reload it the next day if I do have to use the truck for some other reason.
Yeah, all right, well, that's sort of again, it's sort of an ongoing, sort of a boneyard sort of effect or impact.
I agree. I think that we're getting closer and closer to truly defining how it could be used. That it's not, that deliveries by a supplier will not be made to this site.
Correct.
That you would be picking up supplies at other locations, doing your best to use them in that timely fashion, but if there's extra, they could be stored there for a short period of time. But it's not the receiving zone, it's not a loading dock.
Definitely not.
And we could be very clear with those definitions of that storage area. I think that's a minimal. Others may be able to enhance that definition, and we're getting closer to knowing how exactly that would be used. If you're going to get 3 skids of flagstone, they got to go somewhere else.
They go directly.
Directly. Okay, great. George, did you have a follow-up
No,
question?
thanks.
And Doug, I didn't mean to interrupt the flow of your presentation.
Actually, no, that's fine because I'm interacting on your discussion. So it's not I guess the other discussion point really is the kind of the landscape materials / personal items of Hector's that were on the side. We did want to have some flexibility to move those and store some of those, and that's largely where some of that, some of this list came from regarding, stone, cinder blocks, bricks, irrigation. That was some of them. Those were the materials, some of the materials that were stored on the side. So we did want to have the ability to move them away from that side and move them over to this location. That was the reason. It wasn't that we were planning on pulling in tons more stuff, but we did need, because that stuff is there, we would like to store it on this site, and we've talked about it as being residential, but if it's not viewed that way, we would like to be able to store it in this more central area. So that's the reason for that, and that's where those materials came from. So we're trying to resolve that.
I have a question. That's fence too. Is that a fence I see on the?
It is.
Is that the hatch mark fence? So it'd be behind that fenced-in screened area. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, I want to be clear on that as well, because the fence on the drawing is this full L shape?
Yes, goes around
Okay,
back.
it's not
too.
just this side, so it goes to here. as
And it
well.
goes all the way around.
And
Does
around.
go around back.
Okay, and what is the height you're anticipating of that fence?
6 feet.
6 feet. And what sort of, I seem to remember the upslope of the property, what sort of height would that vegetation in front of that on the Highway 82 side be reaching?
You know, there's some material on the Highway 82 side that's probably upwards of 20 feet right now. You know, so some
So
of the
the
evergreens
existing
that are there.
screening that's marked on the map would be breaking up that fence?
It'll definitely be breaking that up. You know, there are some shrubs that are obviously lower than that, but so there's a variation of height. There's some understory stuff, and there's some trees that are coniferous trees that are probably upwards of 20 feet long there.
Thank you for the clarification.
In terms of, I'm just trying to, those materials that were on the side is what we're looking to store in that fenced area in the central location.
I think it'd be good to have a footnote that those materials will not exceed the height of the fence.
Okay.
At any point in
Keep
time.
step.
Okay.
With that, Jimmy, did you have any additional clarifications? That
Yeah.
you-
Let's see. So to answer George's question, the generation of employees, I believe it was clarified. I can't recall. I spoke with Kramer, and I believe it was new generation of employees. Am I correct? New generation of employees for the 1,000 square feet. I believe we went over that. So what my point is, we're not going to generate any new employees with this building. We have an existing company. We are going to not, it's not going to generate new employees. I thought that was specified, I thought that was made clear to me that it'd be new employees, right?
Employees generated with the construction of the
Correct.
commercial buildings, what we talked about in
Correct.
1.13. And then what the applicant has the ability to do is ask the fee administrator, who is the ComDev planning director, for independent fee calculation if you wanted to ask for that. That's the difference. Otherwise, the code says 1.13.
You have to mitigate for.
Yes.
Okay, okay.
Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, and we have not formally tied the residential property to any of the housing demand. Okay.
So to continue on that, we're not going to be generating new employees. We have an existing company. We have an existing service that we provide. I know this looks like a big scope of work. Again, we were trying to remove everything from the single-family home. Everything that means even personal items that look like landscaping items, we would like to remove them just so there's no conflict on what's personal, what's business. I would like to just remove that whole section and put it in one area, which is where the material would be stored. Additional material, it looks like a big scope of work. I believe we are allowed 4 commercial vehicles on site at once. There's 4 parking for commercial vehicles. Commercial vehicles were specified as vehicles that could be license plates. So that excludes bobcats, trailers, vehicles are license plates with a motor. So that does not include trailers, utility trailers, bobcats, hand tools, snow plows, snow blowers, mowers. That does not include that. So that's where the vehicle aspect goes. There's 4 vehicle parking. There will be 4 vehicles at a time there. We do have more than 4 vehicles, obviously. It's a company. They're not going to get stored there at the same time. Our employees drive these vehicles home on a daily basis. They come back. Yes, sometimes they need a bigger truck. They will exchange that truck for a bigger truck, leave one truck, remove another one. As for the circulation there, yeah, it's a bigger lot because we need to circulate with trailers. What else? The staging material, again, it's a little iffy on the staging specifications to where not to where, how we're going to store that area, and I think we can definitely try to get to a greater point on how and what is allowed to store there temporarily, even overnight or in bulk. I mean, I know there's no bulk, but maybe temporarily how to store that material.
Yeah, as I said, I think there's probably some terminology we could find that that it's not the receiving area of from third-party distributors of these materials. It is not, and the primary staging area that, you know, we talked about other commitments before. I don't know if Mike got some of the language. George is right that this other sheet calls it a short-term staging area,
Right.
and you know, maybe we should define that more clearly.
Yeah, maybe that vocabulary wasn't correct.
The other thing I just want to clarify before you go too much further is, so your vehicle list you handed out is the total of vehicles you own. Only 4 of those at any time would be stored on site.
Correct.
But you're giving us the list of what those possibly would be, because there could be an exchange of vehicles.
Of course. There's
Okay,
always an exchange.
because that's where it's like there's a list of 6.
Definitely.
But you're saying only 4 will be allowed for overnight storage on site.
Correct. We respect that 4 vehicle parking only. Again, I listed everything just because there's going to be times where we change them out. Yes, definitely.
Rachel, can I, on the utility trailers, they weren't currently stored on the property, are they?
Correct. On this last visit, there was, I believe, 2 or 3 stored there.
Between the garage and the house is where they were.
Oh, they were tucked in
They were all
there.
tight in there.
Okay. And because your employees, sometimes they take them home at night, and don't they, when they have a job, because they're not always coming and going every day, isn't that?
That's correct. So they would take a vehicle and a trailer, and that's normally how we operate throughout.
Can you address my other question in terms of your other place of business, where that is and what it's being used for, and sort of the size? And I'm just trying to get an idea of other opportunities to better utilize that space and minimize the impact on this space.
Correct. We do have another location. It's located in Basalt at Homestead Drive. So it's a small location. We have our little office there. We don't have much parking. We're not allowed to store any material there either. Usually we are a business that is non-retail, so we don't store big bulk material. We carry our stuff on our trucks, and if they request a dump of topsoil, we hire either a semi-truck or we try to do it ourselves if it's a small quantity. So on this location that we have in Basalt, we don't store any material, and we do have the ability to park, I believe, maybe 4 cars there as well.
So Homestead Drive is in the residential just above Old Town?
Correct.
And so it's just a residential lot?
Mm-hmm.
And so they don't allow any commercial storage?
Correct.
George, I've actually seen that site because I've walked it when I was working in Basalt. They have a great apple tree out in front. And it was kind of where the office space is on one side. And there's also residents there, so I think some of the family might live there on the
Yes.
homestead.
And
there's a house there.
There's a house there.
Mhm.
And so, like other residents, you may be bringing trucks home to that.
Correct.
Right.
So that's where
Yes.
the excess trucks go at night, or to other homes.
And I guess I'd like to make just a general comment to try and support this a little bit more than just providing clarifications. You know, Nakagawa Landscaping does a lot of work in the Mid-Valley area up to Aspen. They do need a location in that area for their business. We recognize that while this isn't zone commercial, there are some commercial-oriented special uses that are allowed in this zone district. We feel like if something like this can get approved, it keeps businesses like Nakagawa's Landscaping from having to locate maybe down in Garfield County and drive up and down the valley 2 times or more as far as they might to run their business. So I guess I just want a big picture. You know, I think it is important that businesses like this have a location. You know, we need to consider impacts to the neighbors. We need to consider allowances under the code. But we're trying to do all of those things in the context of this, knowing that it's for the benefit of people who actually work in Pickens County, so they maybe don't have to drive all the way through Garfield County. There's actually a place for some folks to live here, but it's also for people to be able to provide services within Pickens County and live and work in that community versus having to commute from outside for such a long distance.
I have a question. Rachel had brought, well, we were talking about the new garage and a time frame of building. Before we vacated the approvals on the other side, we need some kind of time frame, I think, for that. We don't want it to be 5 years down the road. We'd like, I'm not saying tomorrow you have to build it. So we just need some kind of idea when that building will be constructed. If not this summer, can we count on it, July of next year? That it'll be done, completed, and then we have a time frame to vacate those other resolutions.
Yeah, that's a good comment, Patty. I think that effectively we need to talk about how this is phased into operation. For example, you wouldn't be able to use the 4 commercial parking spaces until the fencing's up, or you wouldn't be able to use the storage areas until the fencing's up, and things like that. So I think we need to make that very clear that it needs to go that way. Board, with your indulgence, I know we may have continuing questions and additional things to add, but I'd like to take public comment now on this application. I've seen Mark sitting there for a while, and hear what his thoughts are or questions, and then we can continue.
I'm pretty much wrapped up, so
Okay.
We'll see what Mark, unless we wait here.
I will open the public comment period on this application, and just identify yourself for the record, please, if you'd like that.
You can come sit up at the table.
Someone's been working hard today.
Yeah, sit down with the guys.
Excuse me,
That's okay.
We like working men coming in.
We do the same thing.
my name is Mark Obadia. I represent Jackie M. Steele and the Steele Family Trust, located 24351 Highway 82 in DeSault. The first thing I would like to say is that Jimmy and I have been in communications as well as with Doug. Our communication's been a lot better, with what's going on. I've asked several questions about the irrigation. Based on some of the other properties up from us, I think there needs to be some kind of memorandum, and I'll talk to Jimmy about this, that is sent out on a yearly basis to clean the irrigation, because the water is just, it gets clogged up, there's weeds, et cetera, et cetera.
You're talking the ditch.
The ditch, yeah. So, so sometimes I have water and sometimes I don't, and sometimes I have too much. So, in that respect, Jimmy's been very helpful with helping me identify how to get all that organized for me to receive water. So I'm very thankful for that. Based on the site plan, I take a look at both site plans, and I think George kind of identified a little bit of, okay, this is getting a little bit bigger than what I thought it was going to be. So we got to try to play around that, because I know, can I borrow the pointer? I know we've discussed, everything on the booth side that was located on here to be relocated to one of these units here. And, is this considered a rental unit? And how many vehicles, or how many people and how many vehicles stay there based on this being residential, in additional to the 1.3 EFT that's allotted for this 1,000 square foot building. So, whether it's 3 or 4 people, how many people will reside in this, and how many vehicles will be an additional to the vehicles that, the 4 vehicles that are supposed to be here.
Right.
Okay. So that's one question there. I do have notification, I think there was a septic system they were going to put in.
Right.
We have on-site wastewater treatment.
Okay. So this being it's not considered a business, is there going to be a facilities to go to the bathroom?
There is one restroom proposed.
In the garage.
In the garage. And the lower area there is the leach field, I believe.
It's their on-site waste.
Down here.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. How many feet will it go down based on my property being a lot lower than yours? How deep is that leach field going to be? So it's going to have to be regulated based on the level of my property down below.
Well, what we'll have to do is we'll have to have a soils test there to understand what kind of engineered system will need to be designed.
Because you can't do it 4 feet and then it's just going to leach into my.
Right,
to
so
my
obviously if the soils perk really fast, they can't perk into your property or into groundwater, so you have to deal with that. If they perk very slow, we'll have to deal with that. So we'll have to design that system based on a specific soils test.
And I would understand that to be a separate process through environmental health to be able to get the permitting for that.
Right.
So that would be thoroughly investigated. If it was not viable or possible, you know, the whole thing would have to come back.
You know, I still stand with the Booths on this because, you know, I still represent Jackie, and Jackie and the Booths kind of still are still good friends, and they're still against this project. I understand what the Nakagawas are trying to do, but at the same token, you know, it's like when I think of the Salt Business Center, you know, I think there could have been some property purchased there, or rented, or rental where you can store things there, a garage, or et cetera. So I still think that there's other opportunities out there for this type of storage area that doesn't really have to impact this neighborhood. And I still want to stand behind that. Doug and I did speak this morning, a little while ago, about the fence, you know, because Rachel, you did mention something to me about being in more communication with Nakagawas and regarding that. So, you know, should this get approved, you know, I would request that at least a 6-foot fence replace the chain link fence. But also, I think, just as you alluded, to have additional fencing up on the top.
In front of the commercial vehicles, yes.
Yeah, I think
No, that's not on the top of the berm, it's on, it's.
Yeah, I think it's right here.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. It's for the lights, I think you said something like that.
Right, I see.
So, all right. So, I think my concern is, you know, so there's 4 vehicles here at all time. How many vehicles are going to be here at all time? And how many people are going to be here? And I think, let me read what my notes are. I think one of our biggest concerns is the long-term goals of this property and the property next to the other side of the Booths, which is Aspen Rental. The long-term goal of all these properties and having submitted for a commercial use, commercial land use, or commercial property, period. And, you know, we still want all this to stay residential and not be transitioned to commercial. So I just kind of see this, you know, I've alluded to this in the last meeting that, you know, Aspen Rental is there, and then it's right next to the Booths, and then now we have this business right next to the Booths, and they're just sandwiched. You know, my property's not sandwiched because of the landscaping that's on the other side that belongs to the golf course. So, you know, I hope you take that in consideration with this, but, you know, I see what it is. I just don't want it to get any bigger, you know, than, you know, what it was originally intended for, which, you know, they were able to do all this in this small space. Now, we're still utilizing some of the space that is on the existing property, but in additional, we have expanded substantially on the new parcel. So both parcels are going to be impacted. And I thought, you know, that I was hoping that this property was going to be able to go back to being residential completely, but as I see that, you know, it's still going to combine some storage area.
I think part of that was the elimination and the change of where the driveway layout went to be further away from the residents you represented.
Right.
But I
Right.
understand your greater context and greater comment. Do you have other?
That's all I have.
Okay, thank you for taking the time and coming in. Additional presentation or comments or questions from the board?
Yeah.
Let's start with Mike, and then we'll go to George and Jimmy.
I just wanted to add a couple things to the draft resolution that staff prepared. Almost mimics the 2011 resolution and the conditions that were approved then. They are carried forward. And if you'll see, some of the conditions, particularly 10 and 11, we really tried to box these guys in to what could be permitted to be stored out there as far as vehicles, equipment, trailers. And we went as far, if you remember, in 2011 to define those things. And these are definitions that are carried forward in this resolution. Condition number 11 also further boxes in this business to not make it retail. We certainly do not want any retail sales of bulk materials that may or may not be stored there for more than a day. We also have hours of operations identified here, how many commercial visits can happen a day, and then also when business is just outright prohibited, Sunday and federal holidays. We just don't allow that in Pickett County. So that stuff is in there. That's what I want to say.
Okay. Very good on that. And George has a question, then Jimmy, then maybe Patty and me. We'll just keep going around.
A couple of things. So what is currently being stored under the existing application, that will completely be removed, and that material that is...
Along the side here?
Yeah, that material that's currently being stored there, that's going to be removed and be relocated into that area with a fence. Now, that will accommodate not only the existing things that are being stored, but it will also add some additional vehicles or additional materials. I'm just trying to get this, I'm trying to understand the scope in terms of if you're going from parcel A to parcel B, you're opening up parcel A again, so that's just going to revert back to more residential. But how much are we increasing the storage to this new location? Does that make sense?
It makes sense in terms of actual floor area. I could measure it, but I can't really.
I'm just trying to get an idea in terms of, because, you know, landscaping businesses, certainly in this valley, if they want to be successful, they want to continue to grow.
Right.
And so I'm just trying to understand.
Well, at least part of it
comparing
is
those
what's
parcels.
stored in here now will no longer be stored in here now, and that will be moving.
Yeah,
over.
I mean, I can kind of compare a little bit of apples to apples from one to the other. So I would just say this circulation area here, even though this was not a part of storage area for that facility, but that circulation there really did accommodate vehicles coming in, backing into there, pulling out to here. So I would say that circulation there is largely that circulation there. So maybe a little bit bigger, you know, on the new, but it probably also accommodates some of the vehicle movements better than it did previously. This circulation area here, and I'm sorry, I have to look at my smaller map because I can't read that, is actually, that was where a lot of the equipment that will be stored here will be located. So that area there, this area here is this area right here. The utility trailers were back here, and the utility trailers are here. The 4 parking spaces, there was also residential mixed in there too, were there. The 4 parking spaces are here. The temporary material storage, and maybe that's the variation on a theme from the first one, is that we've talked about needing an area for if a trailer has materials in it, and maybe we need to define that. Maybe rather than temporary staging, it's temporary storage. It's not meant to stage for projects, but this is temporary storage area where if a materials come on after a job, there's a couple of trees left, there's some mulch left, there's some soil left, they can pull in here with that material and take it back out. So I would say, I mean, generally, those are the kind of apples to apples comparisons. There are some additional areas here. This could be circulation going around, but some additional storage area for some of the, this was pretty packed in back here. If you really had to access a lot of these things that were right here, you have to pull vehicles out, get a vehicle in, pull that out, move other, you know, it's really, you know, clear this out in order to access all those. This is meant to, if a vehicle can pull through here, back something into there, drop it, and then pull back out. It just creates the need for all of these movements to get materials out of one area. And I'm talking about, you know, the trailers that were back there, to move that stuff out in order to get to something that's in the back. So that area there is utilizing this space here and some of this upper space right here. So that's kind of back and forth how the things line up. I know that's not exact, but that's the concept.
Can I tag on?
Please.
That, you know, when George pointed it out, it does look like this massive expansion. But then going back to the previous site, the residential site, thinking about seeing, and I'm glad we did the site visit, and how things were literally stacked onto each other. This is actually a more efficient flow and probably less time and less noise by being able to just go in and get what you need and pull it out rather than move half of the shop before you get to anything. So it's more efficient, it's more business oriented, and I think, and I'm going to ask you, that this allows you now to keep a better management of the storage areas and the pieces of equipment so that it's better organized, and then again, less noise, less impact to the neighbors.
George, please.
Well, so we have, Mike, as you've said in terms of resolution, we've got a lot to carry over from the existing application. So maximum of 4 commercial vehicles, maximum of 5 Nakagawa commercial visits per day. So I guess, like any code enforcement, we have to rely on the neighbors if there's an abuse to that.
That's correct.
And have we heard of any problems with under the existing application with these requirements from either of the neighbors?
With specificity to 4 commercial vehicles and 5 Nakagawa site
Yes.
commercial visits, not pertaining to that. We have heard complaints from the neighbors regarding what's being stored there and where, and we're aware of that. The storage that was happening east of the garage.
Okay.
That's part of the potential cleanup.
Specifically, it was the expansion with the bamboo for the blades for the plows in that area.
So a maximum of 5 commercial visits a day. So that's each visit is in and out, qualifies a visit.
Correct.
Okay.
And just so you know too, these weren't numbers that staff is proposing or made up. These are actually numbers that are in the land use code that are site-specific development requirements for a business of this nature. So this is actually in the code, and we're furthering that by putting that as a condition in this resolution.
Okay. Mark, as a neighbor, I didn't know the public hearing's closed. Please, you had your hand up. I'll let you.
I'm sorry, I'm trying to respond back to George's question to that. Is a lot of times I'm not home I leave at 3 o'clock in the morning, and I don't come home till about 7 or 8 at night sometimes. It just depends. And I'm not able to monitor that kind of activity. And I think Nancy's been able to monitor it a little bit closer. I think she's more in the home than I am, so it's very difficult for me to monitor that.
Yeah.
But I mean, I just note that I reading the Booth's letter in opposition, she didn't really mention that was an issue particularly. So.
Okay. Jimmy, I think you were next. Trying to come
So,
around.
George was mentioning the scope of work, and Patty was saying that everything was kind of smashed together in that little section on a single-family home. And just to mention, I mean, whenever I had to pull off one trailer, I had to move 2 vehicles and another trailer just to get to that one trailer that I needed. So yes, this looks like an expansion. We're not going to increase our equipment. Unfortunately, Nakagawa's has been in business since 1985, started by Hector. He used to be here in the valley, as Patty might recall. He used to be here up in Aspen. He used to have an office here at the BBC at the airport. He used to have an office there. Unfortunately, things started going down, and we had to start moving down valley. What we're looking for is acreage. Business like this, we need acreage. We did take the time, many years, to look for an area at the BOCC Business Center. Unfortunately, they didn't accommodate our price range and our business either, so that's why we came to the resolution of buying both of these properties. And yeah, so with this new project site plan, the circulation is going to be a better flow, and it looks like an expansion, but it's not. It's just to accommodate the parking and the in and out traffic easier.
Thank you. I wanted to drill down a little bit on the residential questions that have come up. Doug, do you know what is the square footage of the residential home?
I don't. You know, probably the best place to go is the assessor's office and look it up, which I could try and do from here if we
Have a moment or two.
if we have a moment to do that. Yeah.
I mean, it seemed fairly small from being there. It doesn't have a basement? It does have a basement. And how many bedrooms?
It's a 4-bedroom.
4 bedrooms. I'm just wondering again if we, I look at this as a master plan, and you know, we are a violation-based self-reporting code, so it's not as if anyone's going to be looking there all the time to say, are there 12 people or 20 people? And again, I'm not trying to infer that you would do that, but I know that the old Lazy Glen nursery, by the time they had left, had some folks living in the back corners and a little bit of craziness going on there. So I'm just wondering if we could set some sort of realistic limit to the number of private cars that would be associated with the residential house. Because you just have a little too much opportunity for mixing and matching in my mind, where, you know, okay, now tonight we're going to have 2 more commercial vehicles up there and 4 over there, and who's going to know, you know, versus the 2 personal cars or the 4 personal cars. And you know, again, what is the appropriate, you know, I can always imagine 2 people per bedroom as being a normal standard of habitation. You know, that would be 8 people in a very small home.
Why don't we ask them how they use it now?
Yeah. How many folks are living there now? 5. And so, you know, that's well below that sort of threshold.
Because it's family, it's the
Yeah,
family.
it's family.
Yeah,
It's all
yeah.
family, and there's kids.
And I wouldn't want to prohibit that, but again, we have to think about what we've approved and how it will carry forward. Perhaps you will sell the business or find a new location and sell it to someone else who would like to see this. So I don't know if other board members feel strongly enough that we should have some upper limit of 5 residential cars, and no more than 7 people, or anything like that. But I do want to bring the issue forward. Timmy, you have a response to that?
If I may. So, I mean, the limit for us to tell our renters, hey, you guys can't have that many vehicles, or hey, you guys can't have that party because there's only 3 vehicles allowed. There should be a limitation to that as well. I mean, for example, our company vehicles, they have Nakagawa LLC, they have our phone numbers, they have numbers. I mean, you can tell they're commercial vehicles. So, I mean, if we go into that, then we should mention the stickers, the CDOT numbers, so you can defer from commercial and personal, correct?
Okay. Yeah, or are you saying that people's personal vehicles may also be a company vehicle as well? Is that kind of what
No. What I'm saying is, like you're mentioning to put a limit to the vehicles that
The personal vehicles.
residents
Yes, and
use.
I would think you would say it's an overnight limit or something like that. So if you're having a party and you have some guests and they have their own cars, that's separate from how many would be kind of permanently
Oh, of
parking there
course, of
overnight.
course, of
How many
course.
cars reside there?
Yeah, how many cars really reside there? I'm just bringing it forward because this is part of that property, that residential property is going to be part of this special use permit that allows commercial activities there. And John, you have a comment?
No, I thought you were done. I didn't mean to interrupt
Oh.
you, but if you want to know the size of the structures,
Okay, what is the size of
Did
the
you just pull
structure?
it up?
the detached building is 720 square feet. The residential building is approximately 1,800 square feet with a residential occupancy portion of just under 1,000 square feet.
Yes, so.
I think what I'm getting from your comment is that we should not allow any of the Nakagawa's commercial vehicles there regardless.
To be parking there. Yes.
Regardless. And
Overnight.
Anytime,
Yeah.
anytime. If that's a residential home, then there should not, and they've got commercial parking that is part of their master plan, that no commercial vehicles should be up there at all.
So if they wanted to drive up and see if somebody was home or was sick and they were dropping off groceries, they'd have to walk across the property?
Well, why
I think
would
we're
they
getting a
do-
little extreme here myself, but,
Well, that's fine, but I don't agree, because why would you be dropping off groceries in a commercial vehicle?
because you.
All right, that's fine, I don't agree with that, so,
Okay. Jimmy, you had a comment?
Oh, just to comment on George's comment there. I mean, I drive a company vehicle, and I drive it everywhere, like everywhere. It's my vehicle, I can drive it anywhere. Unfortunately, something breaks, they call me. I guess who's driving there? I'm driving there with my commercial vehicle.
To
I
fix
park
the
there,
house.
they call me, they say something's broken, come and do this. I go there. It's not like I'm driving my dually there with a trailer, no. You know,
You're talking about at this residence.
at
If
the
there's
single-family home.
something needs maintenance at the residence,
Of
you drive
course.
your commercial.
Again, I think that if we define it as overnight,
Exactly.
that, you know, you're coming to fix something and you have a commercial truck or you need to drop off some medicine, that's temporary and it's not, and it's related to the residential activities. That there should not be any
Exactly.
Nakagawa commercial vehicles.
Parked overnight.
Overnight, or,
Definitely.
you know, utilizing this area unnecessarily,
That's good to hear.
you know.
No overflow commercial parking.
Yeah, that, just to be clear there. And I know the county does not have, or I believe the county does not have maximum occupancy health standards, unrelated individuals living in a home. So that's not a normal standard that we apply. This will, as a special review, come back for annual reviews. And I think that perhaps we could leave the residency of the house alone and be able to look at that in the future if we hear from folks that, you know, whoever has now got 12 people in this place or something like that, and we could deal with those issues. And I think the septic tank sizing might be about the only limitation we have for how many people can reasonably live in a house. So if we're able
Yeah, I
to
think you're-
include
I
the
think you're-
condition on the vehicles and make that clear, the rest should be separate. I think that we need, as a small footnote, but that the fence quality will be maintained over time. You know, you sometimes see them get a little beat up on some properties.
And I believe that Rachel was right on the mark, that the fencing needs to be installed prior to any commercial use on that property. That's got to be a priority because we want to make sure that that gets done as the protective screening and noise barrier for the neighbors.
Just on a suggestion on that, Patty,
Yeah.
as we were talking about the phasing and how
Right.
this would come online, I was actually just thinking, and just for consideration of the board, we just say nothing may be stored or happen on the west parcel until a certificate of occupancy is obtained. And that would just clean that all up. Therefore, they have to have fencing, they have to have everything in. The building's final inspection, had final inspections, and nothing could happen until then.
Was there an issue or reason why the delay for the construction of the garage? You
Well, I
said-
think that, you know, we could have had building permit ready to apply for, but we didn't know if we were getting an approval. So, you know, we've still got to go through building, architectural, structural, electrical,
So it's just that,
plumbing.
okay.
You know, we've also got to go apply to environmental health,
For
do
the
a soils
septic.
test, you know, well, you know, so there's a lot of work to
Okay.
do. And honestly, it's Nakagawa landscaping prime time of the season right now. So
Everybody's busy.
they have some other priority, or some additional priorities, I shouldn't say other priorities, so.
But the fencing could go up at a point when all this other stuff's going on.
And we've actually talked about being able to work on things like fencing first, so there's still a fencing permit required for fencing. So we'll have to work with the county on that, which we can do, but we could do that as a first phase and then keep working towards the other, you know, more detailed issues related to the building.
I agree with Mike's general approach, but perhaps if we do allocate that the fencing would be the first phase, because then there's going to be screening while there's the construction and the moving of all these things and things like that. We don't want to, you know.
And it shouldn't really impede any of that activity in the core.
Okay. Glad to hear there's been greater discussions about the ditch management. I'm not sure who's in charge of the ditch company or who has the most shares of that, but that is something that all users of the ditch need to work on together. Jimmy, you have a comment?
Yeah, if I may comment on Obedia's, he's been asking me questions about the ditch and everything. The weeds and all that, he mentioned that there are problems with the maintaining of the ditch. I believe and assume that he was also commenting on the whole resident area, not just ours.
No, I wasn't commenting on that.
Yeah, I understand that as well. That's what
we maintain our section, but there's always a flow above us that is not maintained.
Right.
And he also mentioned the flow, sometimes it gets too much, too little. It's Mother Nature, sometimes she gives us a little bit more than we require, and sometimes she takes a little bit more than we...
Do you have a head gate you're able to turn your ditch off?
Personally, on our resident, we do not. The ditch company has one all the way at the top of Holland Hills. And if you're a shared owner, you can adjust it yourself. Unfortunately, there's people that don't know and go shut it off, or sometimes turn it all the way up. And there's no strict rules, regulations. There's one annual meeting, and that's it.
Yeah.
So.
Well, it's just something I'd encourage you both to attend the annual meeting there, and even perhaps request additional meetings. There are requirements of ditch companies and ditch laws and rights of individual ditch right holders. I remember vaguely a circumstance with folks on Red Mountain who, you know, went in, did the work, and then billed the neighbors who hadn't taken care of their ditch for their work, because there is an obligation as it crosses everyone's property to maintain the flows, maintain the quality level of the ditch. But that's not an area our board really has jurisdiction over or can force an action. But I think the two of you guys working together should be able to, you know, get more responsibility out of the ditch company as a whole. Mark, one more.
Yeah, I'd like to comment back onto that. I think the tenants, everyone's really good. I think what happens is we all go to work, and during the day, sometimes either there's weeds or it rained or someone mowed the lawn and the weeds go down and then they get clogged up. You know, so periodically it's going to block and restrict overflow somewhere else. But in general, it hasn't been that bad. It's just that it's just not consistent. And I think that if we had like a piping system that was installed, you know, like I have down in my other home in Junction, you know, it makes it a lot easier, but I mean, we're far away from that, so.
Right. Well, again, the greater the cooperation and proactiveness and maybe education of new owners. Tom Cardamon always told a great story of visiting some people in Woody Creek and kind of talked to them about being involved in ACES. And they said, well, that's great. We have a question for you. With this water going through the backyard, where's the swamp they're draining? And so you have a lot of newcomers who don't necessarily understand Western ditch obligations.
I can only imagine what Tom Cardamon answered to them.
All right, board, we've discussed this for a while. George, I was going to say, any other questions?
I've got one other question. And the reason I pose this, I'm not trying to be nitpicky, but I still have a concern in terms of the overlap between what is being stored commercial, what is being stored private, there's this overlap that if you is currently using, let's say, that flagstone that's being stored privately, well, I'm going to assume that if I wanted some flagstone and I made an offer to Hector, he would probably sell it to me. So where's that overlap? So, but my specific question is, next to the garage, you've got a storage area where you're storing bobcats, truck bed racks, and campers. So explain campers to me.
I can go ahead and do that. On our vehicles, they're pickup trucks. In the winter, we put a camper. which
Shell.
covers- A shell.
A shell,
A
okay.
shell
It's
for the
not
bed.
it's not
And-
a,
No, it's not like a tow trailer.
No
camper.
RVs?
No.
It's
no
not a
RVs.
camper.
I'm sorry.
Neighbor
My
has the
vocabulary
RVs.
is incorrect.
Okay.
So in the winter, we use what I call a camper, which is a shell for the back, and then
Okay.
in the summer, we have to put a rack that holds our lawnmowers on top of it.
okay, I
I'm sorry
understand.
for that definition. My vocabulary is not too good.
Okay.
No, you're
well,
okay.
Let's change that on the master plan.
That was a good question,
documents
George.
To say, camper shells for trucks. Or
Truck shells.
formal term, it's a very good question.
Yeah, that was a good catch.
Okay, are there any other questions or discussion points? We've talked about a number of clarifications and amendments to the resolution, and I hate to put Mike and Lance on the spot to perhaps try to recapture some of those, but why don't you tell us what additions would be added to the resolution?
Okay, I will make my best effort to add these comments in. Okay, so we are looking for conditions. One, nothing on the western parcel, no activity before CO except for fencing that shall be installed with a fencing permit prior to construction of the garage. That also includes fences on the western property line of wooden and 6 foot high in nature on the Obadia property line. And
Replacing
then
the
also
chain link.
Replacing the chain link, and then also the additional fence where commercial storage will occur. We will add language for overflow and no commercial vehicle parking on the east residential parcel. There will be no staging area for landscaping other than what Jimmy has represented to us at the hearing. Only overnight storage if he's coming back from a job. Materials in the storage area, and I'll just point to it because I know my brain where it's going. And that area will not exceed the height of the fence, which is 6 feet. We will add in the inventory that the applicants have represented to us and hold them to that inventory as attachment C. They have that here. We will change camper to topper, if that works too. Pickup truck topper. And I think that's what I have. We were kind of toying around the idea of the residential portion.
That the residential portion shall have shall have 5 private residential vehicles maximum, and no overnight of any
Commercial park.
commercial parking, no crossover between the two. That the fencing shall be maintained in quality appearance. And I don't know if it's in the original approvals or it would be in another edition, that there shall be maintenance of the vegetation on the berm and screening materials in a healthy state. Somewhat weed-free. I know there's a few dandelions everywhere, but we don't want to see that die off again and look like it did when we first saw it. Or saw the earlier pictures of the berm where the seeding didn't take.
I have a question, since we're waiting to vacate that approval on the residential side until we have a CO on the western parcel. what about the next annual review? It should come up next spring, and we may not be at that point yet, and I don't know how we're gonna address that. Will we continue then with the annual review on the eastern parcel anyway? Just move that forward, Lance? You're shaking your head like, yeah?
We have
I think we have to until we vacate it. Okay, just want to make sure we're clear on that so we don't miss that annual review. I think that's important for the neighbors that we keep on top of that.
Okay. Did anyone else have any additions that we were making in terms of the resolution? Mike has already stated we are carrying forward the past conditions of approval about
The time frame and
things like
I
that.
had no delivery by suppliers of bulk materials to the location, that would be something that you would pick up.
Right.
We need to add that in there, make sure.
Yeah, good. Thank you, Lance, for the comment. That had to do with the staging and the definition of the quote storage area. Excuse me, the storage. Other.
Did we need to add anything about the storage of personal items between the garage and the
That these items shall be removed and cleaned up, that the
Got it? You got it?
landscaping and the bamboo fence.
He's got it,
can
he's
remain.
got it.
I had it, I didn't say it.
So just to
I knew I'd
clarify
catch
on that, east section, yes, that material will be moved down towards the new storage area.
Right.
What would you guys like to see on that section? I mean, it's between there's already vegetation and screening, but there's also, it's a gravel driveway. Does that mean a resident from there can't park there, or would
able
it
to park
remain
there.
fenced and no use and just let it? I mean, if we can specify what,
Yeah.
would you, a lawn, or nobody can park there, not even the residents, or remove that fence and make it a parking for the residents? Obviously not adding new vehicles, but
Well, I'd like to discuss that among the
I don't
board.
know.
I mean, part of this effort is to reduce the impacts to the neighbors on the booth side of things.
definitely.
I'm not sure that having standard parking, which is parallel to their parking driveway, would be problematic. The main thing is for it to not become a storage and boneyard area.
Bless you again.
So what is the?
I don't
board
have a
like
problem with
clarifying?
the residents wanting to park there, being that they'd be parking along that whole bank of RVs that's parked at the neighbor's property,
Yeah.
along the fence.
Yeah. George, is that?
Well, I think it should be able to be utilized as a residential property.
As residential uses,
Use, as residential
including
use.
parking. If you wanted to re-landscape it, make it into lawn, you could,
Perfect.
but it would not become excess storage or storage area for the
No.
house. You know, that's the thing.
Definitely.
No storage, but parking and landscaping will be allowed.
Yeah, they can still
Yeah.
use it, it's part
Like
of
a
their
picnic
property.
area, if you'd like.
Residential landscape.
Residential.
Residential
Very
landscape.
residential.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay. Okay, thanks for picking up on that question, asking for a clarification. Is there anything else, Board?
No, I just think that this has been an interesting application. It's gone through a lot of talk and a lot of changes. I know it's difficult for the neighbors, especially the booths who are fenced in now. I mean, I think they had issues. I think there's probably more impact on the other side with Aspen Renthal, because it's got more activity going on over there and less restrictions, I believe. But I think that we've worked on creating the impact into the core, and I think the screening and the fencing is going to make a huge difference, especially to the neighbors to the west. And the repairs and revegetation of the berm, I think, is taking well. When you drive by the property from the highway, the vegetation that's there and the berms there are well kept, and I think it looks really nice when you drive by. So we just hope that we keep this improvements to the property, commercial use, with that same presence from the street side and the protection to the neighbors.
George?
Well, yeah, I would agree with Patty. I mean, since we did approve the past application under special review, for me, although this is still a commercial operation, it relieves, I think, the booths as an adjoining neighbor by cleaning up that adjacent piece of storage and making that a purely residential area. It then moves those materials into a more of a central area. I think it helps address the other adjoining neighbor in terms of adequate landscaping, probably better landscaping than they would have had from someone else. So I'm going to, hold the Nakawakas up to a high standard for special review. You've sort of skirted in the past, probably maybe not intentionally, but there's been times that you've sort of slightly abused that past application. I'm going to hold you up to a very high standard here when you come back for the special reviews, what you're currently under, and then when this gets a CO, and hold you up to that high standard.
Thank you. The one last thing I'd like to add, I hate to do this, but it's been pointed out many times before, Highway 82 is a challenge, and you have people coming in and coming out, and we've, I would request that, you have a sign as people are exiting that says caution, dangerous intersection. And it's just a small heads up to all the drivers.
Every time they go.
Every time they go. We have one out at our public works facility to remind them your job depends on your safety, and it really makes a difference. So I think that is subtle. It does, obviously follow the sign codes related to CDOT or whatever, but
just a little reminder every time.
For all your drivers, no matter how much of a hurry they're in, don't take a chance there. Board, is there a motion?
I will make a motion to approve the Nakagawa Activity Envelope and Site Plan Review, Special Review for Building Materials and Landscaping Storage, and GMQS exemption from Commercial Growth Management for insubstantial growth impacts.
As amended.
As amended. Multiple amendments.
Second.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Is there any further board discussion or comments? There being none, I'll call the question. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Well,
thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thanks.
Rachel, I'm thinking because this has such the specific language, instead of having Steve sign it, who is the chair, obviously, could you?
I'll be around.
Just making sure, just to, so that.
Sure.
Jeanette, we're going to have Rachel sign the.
Yeah, just say vice chair and.
Perfect. Will you take a break before exec?
Yeah, let's go ahead and go into executive first so that then grassroots can shut down. John, I'm going to look to you for the citation, which is?
This would be a motion to go into exec to discuss the Pengree litigation, and the citation is pursuant to CRS 246402-4B.
Okay, is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Thank you very much.
George, are you seconding?
Okay, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much.
Thank you
Thanks.
very much.
And thank
Thanks,
you,
Hector.
Grassroots TV.